Chapter 744. The hidden fog sect master, Hu Fu, had an anxious expression. He said in a low voice, "Miss Yin Dai, Mr. is busy in his laboratory and we shouldn't disturb him. But the Dark Star Eye Serpent is in a critical situation and urgently needs treatment. Now, only Mr. can make a move. Only then will there be a glimmer of hope." He cupped his hands together. "I'll have to trouble Miss to pass a message for me. I will take responsibility for any consequences and will not implicate Miss Yun Dai in the slightest." Elder C and the others nodded again and again. They asked Yun Dai to help them. The hidden fog sect would forever remember the misgraciousness. Yun Dai hesitated for a moment. Then she clenched her teeth and nodded. "All right, I will immediately go find teacher." Under the expectant gazes of the hidden fog sect disciples, she quickly entered the laboratory. Of course, this didn't have much to do with the hidden fog sect's request. Rather, the Dark Star Eye Serpent's condition concerned the outcome of the arena battle. His teacher still had a bet with the person who was secretly plotting to steal the Chaotic Sky Chronicle. If he lost, standing in the laboratory, outside the sealed array formation, Yun Dai took a deep breath and pressed the internal communication device. After a few busy tones, the other side of the phone was picked up. "What's the matter?" His voice was calm and contained a trace of weariness. Yun Dai's heart skipped a beat as she keenly sensed her teacher's low mood. She steadied her mind and said as concisely and clearly as possible, "Teacher, the Dark Star Eye Serpent is severely wounded. Sect Master Hu Fu and the others are waiting outside." The voice on the other side paused for a moment. "Got it." The call was hung up. After several breaths of time, the array formation runes on the surface of the door began to fade away. Qin Yu pushed open the door and left. Yun Dai stood to the side with her head lowered. Beneath the black robes, Qin Yu said in a low voice, "What exactly happened?" Yun Dai said, "Teacher, on the first day of the arena battle, the Witchcraft Sect, Blue Origin Sect, and Mount Fuyao were all defeated. Today, the winner of the competition has obtained the right to challenge the 4 sects in the finals. The Blue Origin Sect won, and they chose Hidden Fog Mountain as their target. Today, in the arena, the Blue Origin Sect's Blue Ape Spirit Beast blew itself up, and the Dark Star Eye Serpent was severely wounded. The situation isn't too good." She wanted to say something, but hesitated. This was an incomparably strange and tragic farce to others, but she could sense something different about it. The black-robed figure was silent for several breaths of time. "I was too careless. I never imagined that they would even be able to control one of the 7 great sections." After obtaining the dragon blood and dragon soul, he had hurriedly restored his wounds. In addition, the Dark Star Ice Serpent had broken through the 10th level halo, and the Hidden Fog Sect had obtained the first round bye on the first day. He had unconsciously lowered his guard in this aspect. Yin Dai's heart tightened. It really was those people. "Teacher," Qin Yu said, "words are useless. Let's take a look at the Dark Star Ice Serpent situation first." The door to the laboratory opened. Hu Fu and the others, who had been waiting outside, looked up. When they saw that familiar black-robed figure, they all revealed looks of joy. "Greetings, Mr." Qin Yu waved his hand. "Don't waste time." Immediately summoned the Dark Star Ice Serpent. Hu Fu respectfully bowed. Light flashed in the void, and the Dark Star Ice Serpent's giant figure rapidly appeared. The surrounding temperature began to rapidly fall. Ka-cha, ka-cha, a deep blue layer of ice appeared. With the Dark Star Ice Serpent as the center, it rapidly spread out in all directions. Outside the laboratory, the lush, vibrant trees and flowers were covered by a layer of ice in the blink of an eye, turning into lifelike ice sculptures. Halos of light flashed around everyone's bodies, resisting the terrifying cold outside. As they saw the Dark Star Ice Serpent's current condition, they couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. The wounds on its body that had been torn open by the ice had already begun to rot. Large pools of stinky mucus dripped to the ground, causing the stone floor to emit smoke. The Dark Star Ice Serpent's formidable regenerative abilities were actually powerless to resist this. Looking through some of the terrifying wounds, one could even see the rotting organs inside. The terrifying cold that erupted at this time didn't mean that the Dark Star Ice Serpent still possessed a formidable strength. On the contrary, it was incomparably weak, so weak that it couldn't maintain its own strength and was even showing signs of collapse. With such injuries, whether or not it could survive was a problem. Moreover, in another 3 days, the arena finals would begin. Everyone from the Hidden Fog sect, including Hu Fu, had darkened expressions. A Grandmaster had the ability to create new species and reverse life and death, but this required enough time. A short 3 days might not even be enough to stabilize its injuries. So what else could they do? Bitterness and helplessness gushed out from everyone's hearts. The position of champion had once been within reach, but now it had become an illusion. The Hidden Fog sect's trip to Dragon City had likely come to an end. Qin Yu furrowed his eyebrows. Right now, he was the only one present who didn't need to stimulate his strength and was able to resist the cold with his mortal body alone. Ignoring the pained and unwilling expressions of the Hidden Fog sect members, Qin Yu grasped Yundai's hand. A warm current gushed out, dispersing the cold around her. Go and examine it. He pulled her forwards. Wherever he went, the ice on the ground rapidly melted away. It was like he was a giant burning torch. Yundai nodded, indicating that she understood. She stood beside the Dark Star Ice Serpent. She took a deep breath and slowly lifted her hand. This scene caused the despairing Hidden Fog sect members' eyes to brighten. They couldn't suppress the hope in their hearts once more. But what they didn't understand was why Mr. Ning Qin didn't do it himself. Instead, he had his disciple examine the Dark Star Ice Serpent's injuries. However, these were all minor matters. Everyone's thoughts raced for a moment before they suppressed them and waited for Mr. Ning Qin's final verdict. After several breaths of time, Yundai drew back her hand. She opened her eyes, her face pale. Her body swayed. Hesitation flashed in her eyes, and she slowly nodded. Beneath the black robes, Qin Yu's expression relaxed. He felt even more admiration toward the abilities of the Chaotic Sky Chronicle. But now wasn't the time to sigh with emotion. He turned and said, "There is still hope. Bring the Dark Star Ice Serpent in. Yundai and I will prepare a treatment plan." The Hidden Fog sect members were overjoyed. Hu Fu cautiously said, "When Mr. Ning Qin says there is hope, you mean, if everything goes smoothly, the Dark Star Ice Serpent will be able to participate in the arena battle 3 days from now." Hu, with Mr. Ning Qin's status, since he spoke, he absolutely had a high degree of confidence. This caused everyone to have an even clearer understanding of how formidable a Grandmaster was. Their faces were filled with ecstasy and shock. Hu Fu bowed. "No matter what price you need to pay, the Hidden Fog sect is willing to bear it. I ask Mr. Ning Qin to do as you please." Qin Yu nodded. He pulled Yundai into the laboratory and went straight inside, where he went into seclusion. The solid ground was now covered with cracks. Layers upon layers of array formation marks had been smashed apart. The clean and tidy laboratory bench and all the precious tools were in a complete mess. Yundai's eyes flashed with shock, because this was where her teacher used to experiment and cultivate. The Hidden Fog sect had reinforced it, making the laboratory's astonishing defenses even more indestructible. Just what did teacher do in the laboratory? And more importantly, just what kind of power was needed to create such a scene that seemed to be a catastrophe? Qin Yu had a calm expression. He pretended as if he didn't notice the female disciple's surprise. He directly said, "Yundai, what do you want to do? Just tell me." Yundai said, "Teacher, the Chaotic Sky Chronicle has already given you a treatment plan." She took out a jade slip. Just as she was about to record the information, she paused. In her panic, she had forgotten about her teacher's habits. "I will tell you directly." Qin Yu waved his hand. "Time is tight. Record the information." Yundai was a bit surprised. She nodded, not saying anything more. She placed the jade slip against her forehead and then handed it to Qin Yu after several breaths of time. As he probed it with his divine sense, Qin Yu subconsciously frowned. After a long time, he took back his divine sense. Generally speaking, The treatment plan given by the Chaotic Sky Chronicle wasn't too complicated, but it required an extremely precious material. The resurrection lily was rumored to only exist in the world where the dead walked. It was completely incompatible with a world where the living lived. Once it was exposed to the outside world, it would suffer the destruction of invisible laws and instantly wither away. And in the treatment plan given by the Chaotic Sky Chronicle, it was the most crucial main material. Moreover, the quality requirements were extremely high. One needed to condense the shadow of the Azura Temple in order for it to take effect. Yundai bit her lips. Teacher, looking through the historical records, there's never been an Azura-level resurrection lily in this world. This treatment plan might be useful, but we simply don't have the means to gather the required materials. Her eyes flashed with determination. She stepped forwards. Teacher, if the dark star ice serpent cannot be cured in the end, then you can hand me over. But no matter what, I will not allow them to obtain the Chaotic Sky Chronicle. How could the several thousand people of the Ing family die in vain? In truth, there were some words she couldn't bring herself to say. Rather than destroying the treasure with her, she might as well give it to her teacher. Perhaps she should try again. What if her teacher changed his mind? Qin, you seemed to sense that something was wrong with this female disciple. He said, that might not necessarily be the case. He turned and left. The Dark Star Ice Serpent was sent to the laboratory. Hu Fu and the others were respectfully waiting to the side. After Qin Yu left, he directly ordered, I need a resurrection lily to treat the Dark Star Ice Serpent. The more mature it is, the better. Can you find it? Resurrection lily? The hidden fog sect members all had dignified expressions. They looked at each other and fell silent. Mr. had a treatment method, but they couldn't produce the materials. Elder C clenched his teeth. He suddenly said, I know that the Western Tomb Divine Church has a secret area where a resurrection lily grows. With just this one sentence, no matter who asked him, he wouldn't say a single word. Even so, just these words could draw in a great deal of trouble. Elder C bitterly smiled. If he had any other choice, he wouldn't have stepped forward. Hu Fu looked deeply at Qin Yu and then turned. He cupped his hands together and said, Mister, rest assured that I will deliver the resurrection lily to you within a day. Qin Yu took out the jade slip that Yundai had given him. If he didn't have the whereabouts of the resurrection lily, then everything was empty talk. And here are the other materials needed to complement the resurrection lily. The finals are just around the corner, so prepare them as soon as possible. Hu Fu received the jade slip with both hands. At the latest tomorrow, everything will be sent to the laboratory. He bowed and then left. His eyes were calm and filled with tenacity. Beside the Shadow Clan Saintess was a young master of the Western Tomb Divine Church. Perhaps this person was the only chance of survival for the Dark Star Ice Serpent. This time, he had gambled everything. He had to help the hidden fog sect break free of its shackles and obtain a new life. For this, Hu Fu didn't hesitate to pay any price. Yundai looked at her teacher's side profile. A trace of vitality was restored to her originally gloomy heart. She thought back to before the Shadow Clan auction. It was also in this laboratory that she had seen with her own eyes those dense, high-quality shadow trees. Chapter 745 Shadow Clan Station. Within the newly built Saintess Palace, Jolie came out to receive the visiting Hidden Fog Sect Master Hu Fu. After exchanging some pleasantries, they sat down. Hu Fu was worried, but as he was able to become a sect master, his IQ and EQ were both extremely high. He certainly knew the key to obtaining the Resurrection Lily. Although it was the Western Tomb G family's young master, the saintess in front of him was the true breakthrough. It was just that he couldn't find a topic to talk about. As Hu Fu was thinking, he didn't know that Jolie was also feeling nervous. In the arena battle, the Blue Origin Sect's Blue Ape had self-destructed and severely wounded the Dark Star Ice Serpent. And Qin Yu was in the Hidden Fog Sect, using the tiger's power to stir up trouble. Could it be that he had exposed himself? If so, then Ningqin wouldn't care about his life or death. With the status and dignity of the seven great sects, how could they tolerate this? In an instant, he would be consigned to eternal damnation. Who knew why the hidden fog sect master had come here? The more he thought about it, the more uneasy he felt. So, after a brief silence, Jolie pursed her lips. Sect Master Hu Fu, if there's something you need, please speak frankly. I have some arrangements to make today. If the hidden fog sect had discovered something, they would definitely reveal it. Across from her, Hu Fu took a deep breath. He cupped his hands together and said, Your Highness Saintess, I came here today to ask for your help. If I can achieve my goal, then the hidden fog sect will owe your highness a great favor. If there is anything you need in the future, the hidden fog sect will not refuse. This was an extremely heavy promise. Jolie relaxed. As long as nothing happened to Qin Yu, then everything was fine. Then, she thought about what the hidden fog sect master had said. It seemed that they had encountered a great problem. But although she was the Shadow Clan's saintess, her influence in the clan was limited. How could she help the hidden fog sect? Her thoughts raced. Jolie said, If sect master Hu Fu is so sincere, then please speak. But I cannot guarantee that I will be able to help you. Hu Fu nodded. The Dark Star Ice Serpent's injuries are extremely heavy. In order to save its life, we need a strange treasure called the Resurrection Lily. According to what I know, this flower is extremely rare in the world. There is only one that exists in the Western Tomb Divine Church. Jolie frowned. Sect Master Hu Fu seems to have come to the wrong place. If you want the Resurrection Lily to save the Dark Star Ice Serpent, you should be looking for Ji Yun. Hu Fu nodded. I do need to ask young Master Ji Yun for help, but the Hidden Fog sect doesn't have much of a relationship with the Western Tomb's Ji family. Thus, I came here in hopes that your Highness the Saintess can step forward and introduce me. Of course, this was only an excuse on the surface. His true intention was to ask Zhou Li to come forward and help convince Ji Yun to hand over the red spider lily. Jolie had naturally guessed this, but she did not wish to use herself to influence Ji Yun's own judgment. This would give her a feeling that she was using someone else's feelings for personal gain, which was not in line with her character. Just as he was about to refuse, a thought flashed through Zhou Li's mind. He paused and said, How did Sect Master learn that the Resurrection Lily can cure the Dark Star Ice Serpent? Hu Fu revealed an awkward expression. This, Jolie looked straight at him. If Sect Master Hu Fu finds it difficult, then I will make my own guesses. Sect Master Hu Fu only needs to nod or shake his head. I will not ask any questions. Is this matter related to the black-robed man who used the Dark Star Ice Serpent to seize first place? Hu Fu thought for a moment and slowly nodded. Anyone could guess this. He hadn't revealed any information about this mister. It had to be known that helping the Hidden Fog sect suppress all other forces and seize first place in the arena was something that would offend many people. It really was him. A gloomy light appeared in Jolie's eyes. In her opinion, with Qin Yu's status and identity, how could he possibly know of the existence of the Resurrection Lily? This must have been a request that Ning Qin had borrowed his mouth to put forth. It seemed that Yin Dai had already reported her stance. But Ning Qin clearly didn't care about her threat and instead used it to force her to help the Hidden Fog sect. This bastard, did he not fear that she would publicize the matter of the Shadow Clan's auction? At that time, even if he was strong and had a mysterious background, facing the anger of the 7 great sects, he would still be in a difficult position. Zhou Li's chest heaved up and down as she suppressed her anger. She was sure that if she really did this, Qin Yu would be the first to die. This fellow, couldn't he just honestly live the life of an ordinary person? Dissatisfaction and resentment instinctively rose up from the depths of her heart. But in the next moment, all of this vanished because everything that Qin Yu was facing right now was likely because of her. After several breaths of silence, Zhou Li took a deep breath. Sect Master Hu Fu, please follow me. No matter what, she couldn't watch helplessly as Qin Yu fell into danger. Hu Fu was overjoyed. Thank you, Your Highness Saintess. With Zhou Li stepping forward, the chances of success were much higher. After leaving the Saintess Palace, they arrived at Ji Yun's dwelling. This was a massive and luxuriously decorated white palace. Beneath the sunlight, It reflected a brilliant halo of light, shining brightly. As the young master of the Western Tomb Divine Church, he had the qualifications to obtain the respect and courtesy of the Shadow Clan. Jolie came to visit. Jian soon came out to greet her, a warm smile on his face. After seeing Hu Fu, he was startled. "Jolie, Sect Master Hu Fu, please come in." In a small hall in the visitors' area, they sat down on a soft sofa. The Shadow Clan maids respectfully served tea and then left. Jian glanced at Zhou Li's dignified and hesitant expression. He smiled and said, "Sect Master Hu Fu, did you come to visit me today?" With his intelligence, he didn't need to open his mouth to see some things. Hu Fu went straight to the point. "It is indeed so. The reason I asked your Highness Saintess to introduce me today is because I hope to be able to trade for a wondrous item from the Western Tomb Divine Church. I asked young Master Ji Yun to help me." Ji Yun glanced at Zhou Li. Her face flushed red. "Ji Yun, if it isn't too excessive, I hope that you can help Sect Master Hu Fu." "All right." Zhou Li's eyes widened. As she looked at Ji Yun's smile, her heart stirred. She bit her lips and said, "Thank you." Ji Yun waved his hand. "There is no need to speak of such things between us." He turned around. "Sect Master Hu Fu, please speak frankly." Although he was a bit dissatisfied that Hu Fu had started with Zhou Li, this matter would undoubtedly increase his standing in Zhou Li's heart. Thus, Ji Yun readily agreed. But a promise was a promise. If he wanted to obtain something, he needed to pay a sufficient price. In this aspect, he wouldn't give face. Hu Fu gratefully looked at Zhou Li. He cupped his hands together and said, "I heard that in some mystic realm of the Western Tomb Divine Church, there's a resurrection lily growing there. The Hidden Fog sect has enough sincerity to reach a deal." Ji Yun's complexion changed. His eyes turned cold, and he fell silent. The air gradually thickened. After a long time, he slowly said, "May I ask Sect Master Hu Fu, where did you learn about the resurrection lily?" Hu Fu's heart skipped a beat. As he thought back to Elder C's bitter expression, he awkwardly said, "This," Ji Yun coldly sneered. "I won't hide it from Sect Master Hu Fu. This matter involves an unsolved case of the Western Tomb Divine Church. If Sect Master can tell me the source of this information, then I can represent the Divine Church and agree to a deal with the Hidden Fog sect. Otherwise, Sect Master Hu Fu, I ask that you return and search elsewhere." He added, "Zhou Li, it isn't that I don't care about your feelings, but this matter is too important. If I conceal it, I will surely be punished afterwards, so I ask that you not blame me." There were some words that had to be clearly stated as soon as possible. Otherwise, it would be inappropriate to say them later. Jolie nodded. She already felt guilty for stepping forward to help the Hidden Fog sect, so how could she say anything more? She had already done everything she could. As for what the result would be, that would depend on the Hidden Fog sect's own choice. Hu Fu sighed inwardly, apologizing inwardly. Saving the Darkstar Eye Serpent was the most important matter for the Hidden Fog sect right now. "Elder C, I'm sorry. Hidden Fog sect Situ," Ji Yun muttered to himself. His expression didn't change in the slightest. "I am a man of my word. I asked Sect Master Hu Fu to make a bid. I don't need to explain how precious the resurrection lily is." Hu Fu took out a jade slip. Ji Yun took it and probed it with his divine sense. After several breaths of time, his complexion relaxed a little. He thought for a moment and said, "All right, we will bid according to this. Young Patriarch Ji Yun, I hope that I can obtain the resurrection lily today. Of course, the Hidden Fog sect is willing to pay an additional fee for this." Ji Yun nodded. Of course, the ancient god that the Western Tomb Divine Church worshipped had yet to perish. A god-favored could borrow the power of this god to complete a transmission within the world. This was something that the entire world knew. As the Western Tomb Young Patriarch, he was a god-favored of the highest level and had the qualifications to open a transmission. Hu Fu cupped his hands together. "Thank you." Ji Yun stood up. "I need to make some preparations. Jolie, bring Sect Master Hu Fu outside and wait. Don't let anyone disturb us." The Divine Church's ceremonies were solemn and pious. They didn't tolerate the least bit of blasphemy. Jolie nodded and left the hall with Hufu. Your Highness Saintess, the Hidden Fog sect will soon have a gift for you. Please accept it. If it weren't for Jolie speaking up today, Hufu was sure that he wouldn't have been able to obtain the Resurrection Lily. Even if he had already made a promise, it was only natural for him to thank her now. Jolie shook his head. There is no need for a gift. If Sect Master Hufu has the heart, please help me pass on a message to Miss Yandai. I want to see an old friend as soon as possible. She will naturally understand. Hufu already knew that Jolie had gone to visit Yandai, so he wasn't surprised that the two of them knew each other. All right, I will certainly pass on the message. An hour later, Ji Yun walked out of the White Hall. He wore white clothes and a jade crown on his head. He looked even more handsome and extraordinary. Hufu hurried forwards. Young Patriarch Ji Yun? Ji Yun said, there have been some changes in the situation. My father has agreed to make a deal with the Hidden Fog sect, but the place where the Resurrection Lily grows is strange and dangerous. The Divine Church doesn't have a suitable candidate to pick it for now. If Sect Master Hufu wishes to obtain it today, you must go there yourself. The Divine Church must prepare a transmission gate for you. Hufu relaxed, but as he heard these words, a cold sweat began to drip down his back. No problem. I am willing to personally go. Ji Yun glanced at him. Very well. The transmission gate will be completed in 2 hours. Sect Master Hufu can make some preparations ahead of time. Hufu cupped his hands together and hurried away. With the Western Tomb Divine Church's strength, if they said that it was strange and dangerous, then the mystic realm where the Resurrection Lily resided was absolutely terrifying. How could he dare to be careless? Since he had 2 hours, he had to prepare as much as he could. Chapter 746. When the Western Tomb Divine Church agreed to trade the Resurrection Lily, the entire Hidden Fog sect was filled with excitement. Several other precious spiritual objects that were required for the treatment plan were also sent back with confirmation. As long as they obtained the Resurrection Lily, the treatment plan could begin. If Mr. Ningqin took action, he might be able to reverse the situation and reverse the situation. As for the dangers that the Western Tomb Divine Church mentioned, the high-level figures of the Hidden Fog sect thought this was normal. In order to obtain something, one had to pay a price. There was no such thing as a meat pie falling from the sky. Hufu said, Mister, after I make some preparations, I will immediately go to the Western Tomb Divine Church's mystic realm and bring back the Resurrection Lily. Qinyu was about to nod when a confused voice sounded out in his soul space. Resurrection Lily? It was like someone had just woken up and hadn't yet recovered. Then, in the next moment, the voice repeated itself. Resurrection Lily. The same 3 words, but the meaning behind them was completely different. The cosmic sea-cross bell flashed and Mimi's figure appeared. Her eyes were wide open, as if there were flames burning in them. Qinyu, I heard someone mention the Resurrection Lily just now. Is it the kind that only grows in piles of corpses? His soul opened its eyes and happened to hear these words. His lips twitched. If I'm not wrong, then it should be this kind. Mimi placed her hands on her hips and laughed. Her demeanor as a little beauty vanished without a trace. Ha ha! I knew that the heavens must have been too harsh to me in the past, so they are thinking of ways to make up for it. Resurrection Lily of the world of the dead. I can't believe I can encounter something like this in the world of the living. My luck is simply heaven-defying. Her complexion changed. She glared at Qinyu. Where is it? Hurry and hand over the Resurrection Lily to me. It is mine. Qinyu's complexion was strange. As he looked at her crazed appearance, he hesitated on whether or not he should tell her the truth. As if sensing his thoughts, an incomparably beautiful purple moon walked out from the purple moonlight. Her slender legs were faintly discernible beneath her purple dress, causing one's heart to beat faster and their mouths to dry up. Little girl, don't think too much about it. This Resurrection Lily wasn't prepared for you. Her tone was leisurely, but there was a trace of regret in it. The red spider lily was nurtured by gathering the yin-chi of heaven and earth, and it was of great help to her. Why? Mei Mei's face twisted. If she couldn't give a satisfactory explanation, she would flip out on the spot. Qin Yu said helplessly, Mimi, I really can't give it to you. Thus, he briefly explained what had happened. Mimi was so distressed that her face paled. Why do you care about that stupid dark star-eye serpent? It was injured by someone else, so if it wants to die, then let it go. Humph. A cold snort interrupted Mimi's complaints. She instinctively shrunk her neck, revealing a fearful expression. The silhouette of a blue sun appeared. Within the light, one could faintly see a graceful figure. Her voice was ice-cold, without the slightest bit of warmth. I want to go to the place where the red spider lily grows. This was not a request, but a straightforward statement, as if whatever she said would definitely become the truth. Purple Moon smiled. That's right. I also think so. There was only one red spider lily, and it was indeed a pity that he couldn't obtain it. But the place where it grew was also a lucky chance. Although this lucky chance required luck, Qin Yu's luck had never been bad. If there really was one, then his harvest would likely be even more astonishing than directly obtaining the red spider lily. I also want to go, Mei Mei decisively said, her tone firm. Purple Moon smiled. You're still young. Eating too much is easy to harm your body. You might as well sleep for a while longer and digest and absorb the energy to consolidate your foundation. Thank you for Big Sister Purple Moon's concern. Although I'm small, I have a great appetite. Even if I eat 10 more meals, I still won't feel bloated. The graceful figure within the blue sun coldly said, If there is, I want half. Purple Moon's eyes narrowed. After a moment of silence, she nodded. All right, Shua. The blue sun vanished from sight. Purple Moon lowered her head, a gentle smile on her face. Little Mimi, let's discuss this. Qin Yu withdrew his divine sense. Beneath his black robes, he was left speechless. These three women, weren't they disrespecting him a little too much? Too much. Did they think that just because they said they wanted to go, he had to go? How laughable. Hu Fu hesitated. Mister, is there something wrong? After he spoke just now, Qin Yu had fallen silent. This sort of silence left one feeling uneasy. Cough. Qin Yu regained his composure. Where the resurrection lily grows, there are dangers that ordinary people don't know about. If you go alone, I fear it won't be appropriate. I will go with you. He was a man, so how could he lower himself to the same level as a woman? He had to consider the overall situation. The entire hidden fog sect was filled with awe. Mister, with your status, was actually willing to take such a risk. This was simply moving. Hu Fu bowed with joy. Thank you, mister. With you helping, there will definitely be no mistakes. After speaking a few more words, the hidden fog sect people drew back to make some necessary preparations. Yindai helped her teacher send everyone out. After taking several steps, Hu Fu suddenly turned back. I almost forgot something. Miss Yindai, please wait a moment. I saw the Shadow Clan Saintess, Jolie. She asked me to pass on a message that she hopes to meet with an old friend as soon as possible. Jolie was a great help in persuading Ji Yun. If things aren't too difficult, I hope that Miss Yindai will do her best to help. Hu Fu cupped his hands together and quickly left. Looking at his departing back, Yindai was stunned. All sorts of thoughts raced through her mind. Within Dragon City, news of the Western Tomb, Divine Church's young master pursuing the Shadow Clan Saintess, had already spread far and wide. From Hu Fu's words, it could be judged that this news was true. Jolie had helped the hidden fog sect. But was that really the case? If Jolie didn't know that Qin Yu was Ning Qin, then if Hu Fu came to ask for help, there was a high chance that it would be interpreted as some other signal, such as a threat. Now, Jolie had asked to see Qin Yu. Yindai bitterly smiled. This was most likely what had happened. Teacher, why didn't you explain things clearly? She hurried back to the laboratory and conveyed Jolie's words. She also vaguely mentioned her own speculations. On the sofa, Qin Yu rubbed his temples, feeling a bit troubled. He had tried his best to avoid this, but he never imagined that he would still have to meet with Jolie. Ji Yun was at the Shadow Clan station. If he wanted to enter the Western Tomb, Divine Church's mystic realm through the transmission array, he couldn't bypass her. Taking a deep breath, Qin Yu said, I understand. At the start, he had hidden his identity from Zhou Li because he didn't want any problems to arise. Moreover, he didn't enter Sky declaring pavilion in peace. Rather, his only goal was to restore his wounds as soon as possible. Qin Yu wasn't sure whether or not this goal would stir up trouble in the future. If his relationship with Zhou Li was exposed, it was likely she would be implicated. As for now, with the existence of the Dark Parliament, it was even more impossible for Qin Yu to reveal that he was Ning Qin. Otherwise, with the Dark Parliament style of doing things, they might directly capture Zhou Li and force him to lower his head in the Beast King War. Even one of the dignified 7 great sects, the Blue Origin sect, had been played around in the palm of their hands. Qin Yu didn't doubt that the Dark Parliament had the ability to do this. How could he explain this to Zhou Li? This was indeed a difficult problem. For a time, Qin Yu couldn't think of a solution. He could only adapt to the situation. 2 hours soon passed. Hu Fu and Qin Yu were led by a Shadow Clan cultivator to Ji Yun's dwelling. A tall and slender figure was already waiting outside the hall. She slowly turned around. She wore an exquisite and wide dress that accentuated her graceful figure. Her curves flowed with charm and charm. Her black and white eyes fell on Qin Yu's body. To nourish the body, to nourish the energy. Today, Zhou Li was the saintess of Dragon City. Her body was soaked with dragon energy, making her seem even more noble and beautiful. Although her appearance was the same as before, she seemed like a completely different person. At this time, she stepped forwards. Her face was indifferent, and there was a dignified dignity between her eyebrows. Every movement and movement she made was filled with momentum. She directly said, "Fellow Taoist, please follow me." She turned and walked to the side. Hu Fu was shocked. He instantly understood that the old friend Zhou Li spoke of was likely Qin Yu. No wonder she was able to obtain the approval of Dragon City and become the Shadow Clan Saintess. As for the rumors in the outside world, she was just a lucky, ordinary woman? If she knew Mr. and their relationship wasn't shallow, how could she possibly be an ordinary person? What a joke. Qin Yu already knew he couldn't avoid this, so he had already made preparations. He lightly said, "I'll be right back." There was no way to explain this matter, so he didn't say anything. Hu Fu respectfully bowed. "Yes, mister." Zhou Li paused. She subconsciously frowned. Even if today's situation was caused by her, did Qin Yu not know her status? To have the dignified, hidden Fog Sect Master act so respectfully in front of him, did he feel refreshed? Didn't he think that once his identity was exposed, no matter how glorious he was now, his future would be 10 times or even 100 times more miserable? What use was there in flaunting the might of a tiger? Besides satisfying his vanity, he hadn't obtained anything at all. In the end, the only thing a person could rely on was their own strength. But even now, Qin Yu didn't seem to understand this truth. Disappointment gushed out from Zhou Li's heart. Her complexion became increasingly indifferent. She flicked her sleeves, and a shadow flashed, covering her and Qin Yu. The sound of footsteps behind them stopped. The air fell deathly silent. "Is there nothing you need to say to me?" Zhou Li turned and coldly asked. Beneath the black robes, Qin Yu thought for a moment. He said, "I never thought I would meet you in Dragon City." Zhou Li mercilessly exposed him. "Is it because you didn't think of it or because you didn't want to? Do you think I don't know what happened at the Shadow Clan auction?" This was awkward. Qin Yu never thought that his actions on that day would be discovered by Zhou Li. No wonder her complexion wasn't so good. He originally didn't know how to explain things, and now the situation seemed even more awkward. The silence beneath the black robes caused Zhou Li to frown. She took a deep breath and suppressed her mood. Hu Fu wanted to take the resurrection lily. "So why did you come with him? Did Yin Dai tell you to take advantage of this opportunity to see me?" Qin Yu coughed. "No, I wanted to go with Hu Fu to the Western Tomb, Divine Church's mystic realm." The space fell deathly silent. Across from him, Zhou Li's eyes widened, revealing anger and alarm. "Go with Hu Fu? Aren't you afraid of death?" The anger in Qin Yu's heart was thoroughly ignited, erupting at this moment. "Qin Yu, Do you really think that you have become a great figure that everyone respects, and relies on? Acting is fine, but if you immerse yourself too deeply, you will only harm yourself in the end. During the Shadow Clan auction, if it weren't for me asking Elder One to help you prepare a transmission array to escape, you might not have been able to pass through the witchcraft sect. And today, if it weren't for me, it would have been impossible for Hu Fu to obtain the chance to trade for the Resurrection Lily. Ning Qin doesn't care about your life or death. He is controlling you from behind, so he must have some unspeakable secret. If you continue to wallow in your vanity and don't resist, sooner or later you will lose your life. Jolie was enraged. She clenched her teeth and said, "After today, you will stay in the Shadow Clan. No matter what happens, I will ensure your safety." She couldn't send Qin Yu to his death. Looking at Zhou Li's angry expression, Qin Yu felt a bit embarrassed, but also a bit of warmth. Although her tone was harsh, it couldn't conceal her concern for him. Otherwise, why would she waste so much effort trying to meddle in his affairs? But even if Zhou Li had good intentions, Qin Yu could only apologize. He had to go to the Western Tomb, Divine Church's mystic realm. In this world, where the level of cultivation was clearly higher than that of the land of divinity and demons, even if he were to restore himself to his peak state, he still might not be able to enter the top ranks. The stronger Purple Moon and the others were, the more secure he would be. No need. I believe in Teacher. He won't harm me. Chapter 747. The White Palace that was bathed in sunlight opened, and the handsome Ji Yun, dressed in a long white robe, walked out. His gaze swept across the distance and landed on the two blurry figures in the light. Although he could not see them clearly, he instantly recognized Zhou Li. Hu Fu explained, "Young Master Ji Yun, Saint Zhou Li has some matters to attend to. If time is tight, I can go and remind her." Ji Yun shook his head. "There's no need. Just wait a moment." He looked at the light projection, his eyes calm. How could a man that needed a woman to secretly protect him have the qualifications to compete with him? Even though he had left some traces in Zhou Li's heart, Ji Yun believed that it wouldn't be long before this person would become a thing of the past. He was confident in this. Of course, if he could grasp information about this person, this process might be even faster. Ji Yun thought for a moment and said, "Sect Master Hu Fu, can you tell me a thing or two about that black-robed person?" Hu Fu shook his head without hesitation. "I'm sorry, but I swear I will not reveal anything about this person. I ask for young master's forgiveness." Ji Yun had a calm expression. "It's fine. Those that hid their heads and showed their tails must have hidden secrets." With Zhou Li's personality, she didn't like this sort of behavior. If so, then even if she couldn't obtain information about this person, it didn't matter. At this time, the light projection in the distance shattered. Zhou Li turned without hesitation and quickly walked over. Ji Yun walked forwards. His eyes swept over her still angry face, and he smiled. "Zhou Li, who made you angry?" His gaze fell on her back, and a cold chill circulated around her black robes. If Zhou Li expressed any dissatisfaction, he wouldn't mind teaching this person a lesson and letting him understand the disparity between them. Zhou Li shook her head. "It's fine. If the transmission gate has been completed, then send them in." "Them?" Ji Yun revealed a look of surprise. He looked at Qin Yu and asked, "This fellow Taoist also wants to go in?" Zhou Li nodded without expression. Ji Yun thought for a moment and said, "Zhou Li, what I said before about the incomparably dangerous mystic realm wasn't an alarmist. If you don't have enough strength and recklessly enter, I fear you will be doomed." He frowned, a hint of warning in his calm eyes. "Fellow Taoist, I advise you to consider this carefully. Don't throw away your life in vain." Beneath the black robes, Qin Yu's eyes fell on Ji Yun. He was indeed a young man with an extraordinary bearing and an upright aura. Of course, he didn't lack the arrogance and condescension that a young master of the Western Tomb, Divine Church, should have. But his status gave him the qualifications to be arrogant, so this couldn't be considered a flaw in his character. In short, Qin Yu's first impression of Ji Yun was quite good. He shouldn't be someone with a dark and gloomy mind. If Zhou Li was together with him, It could also be considered a good marriage. I've already made up my mind. Thank you for your reminder, young Lord Ji-yun. Her tone was calm and indifferent. Besides facing Zhou Li, where he felt a bit uneasy because of guilt, Qin Yu was able to calmly deal with everyone else. But in Ji-yun's eyes, this calmness and indifference seemed artificial. Was it because he didn't want to appear weak and cowardly in front of Zhou Li? Ji-yun smiled, his evaluation of Qin Yu dropping even further. For the sake of face, he had actually placed himself in such a dangerous situation. He was simply stupid. Zhou Li said angrily, "They don't know how the word death is written, so why should we waste our breath?" Ji-yun, let them in. Okay. Ji-yun smiled. He certainly didn't care about Qin Yu's life or death. The reason he reminded Zhou Li just now was because he didn't want Qin Yu to die and leave behind an eternal mark in Zhou Li's heart. But now, it seemed that Qin Yu had angered Zhou Li in their conversation just now. Since that was the case, he had no reason to stop them. After all, even a lowly and insignificant person had the right to decide their own life and death. You two, please follow me. Hu Fu nodded. He followed behind Ji-yun, but as he looked at this young master of the Western Tomb, there was a trace of ridicule and contempt in his eyes. He was just a second-generation young master who had good reincarnation skills and relied on a strong background. Even if he was calm and quick-witted, that was just a facade. If it weren't for the Mr. seeming to have no interest in Zhou Li, did you really think you could compete with him? Hurry up and go home to play in the mud. Zhou Li had a cold expression, not saying a single word. She watched as Ji-yun brought Hu Fu and Qin Yu away. But the moment the three of them stepped into the main hall, her heart skipped a beat. It was like there was an empty space in her heart. A bit of loss appeared on her icy face. He had left like this, entering the extremely dangerous mystic realm of the Western Tomb Divine Church. It was highly likely that he would never return and would forever vanish from her life. A sour feeling gushed out from the depths of her heart. Zhou Li subconsciously bit down on her lips. She bit down so hard that a faint red color appeared. But the pride in her heart made it impossible for her to lower her head again. She had already done everything she could, so what could she do if Qin Yu didn't appreciate it? Just let him be. She turned and left. Zhou Li lifted her snow-white neck, her eyes meeting the bright sunlight. She muttered, "Qin Yu, you bastard." The group of three didn't speak. Only the sound of their footsteps echoed in the main hall. Qin Yu was the last to leave, a bitter smile on his face beneath his black robes. It seemed that he had ruthlessly offended Zhou Li once more. But perhaps this was also a chance for him to completely separate himself from her. The further away Zhou Li was from him, the safer she would be. From his point of view, this was also a good thing. It was just that as he thought about the gaze that fell on him before he entered the main hall, even with Qin Yu's willpower and temperament, he couldn't help but feel a bit disappointed. Whatever, it was fine as long as he had a clear conscience. As for the rest, he would just let him be. The hall that Ji-yun lived in could be ranked in the top 5 of the Shadow Clan. After walking for some time, they arrived at a sealed hall. A milky white halo of light spread out from the hall. It was like flowing water, spreading to every corner of the hall. It was gentle, calm, but also incomparably formidable, as if it could contain everything in the world. A vast and noble aura exuded from it, making one feel awe and submission from the bottom of their hearts. After taking several more steps, they turned a corner and arrived at the center of the hall. Suddenly, the world opened up. A 40 to 50-foot high portal stood in the center of the hall. On its surface, complex and exquisite textures wove together. The milky white light that flooded the hall came from these textures. Behind the portal, space fiercely twisted, nearly forming a mass of chaos. It silently fluctuated, as if it connected to an unknown land in the distant future. Ji-yun stopped. With a respectful and solemn expression, he said, "Sect Master Hu Fu, this is the portal that leads to the mystic realm where the resurrection lily is. It can be maintained for 24 hours. In other words, you two must be transmitted back by tomorrow at the latest." As for Qin Yu, he was a person destined to die, so why would he care about him? Hu Fu nodded. Thank you for the reminder, young Master Ji Yun. He turned to glance at Qin Yu and then stepped into the hall. After several steps, he stepped into the portal. Qin Yu followed behind. As he entered the portal, Ji Yun's calm voice echoed out, I will take care of Zhou Li in the future. She will live a good life. Qin Yu paused and looked back. I hope so. Otherwise, I will be very unhappy. Shua. He stepped backwards and vanished into the portal. Outside the hall, Ji Yun frowned. He thought back to Qin Yu's calm words just now, as well as the deep eyes beneath the black robes. At that moment, the feeling that Qin Yu gave him wasn't normal. Was he really an ordinary person like Zhou Li said? These thoughts raced for a moment before they were immediately suppressed. He understood Zhou Li's character. She wasn't someone who would lie. Moreover, with the current situation of the Helm Mystic Realm, even if the hidden Fog Sect Master entered, he might not be able to escape unscathed. Even if this person had some methods, what could he do? Shaking his head, Ji Yun turned and left, his heart calm. He hadn't gone against his own beliefs and agreed to the deal with the Hidden Fog Sect. He had also reminded them of the dangers of this trip. Even if there was an accident, that was their own problem and had nothing to do with him. The Upper Prime Mountain Range stretched on for 1 trillion years. To the east of the mountains was a vast plain. The 7 great sects stood tall, each ruling a territory. But if one left the mountains and headed west, after passing through large tracts of low hills, the terrain would suddenly rise. What appeared in front of the world was an incomparably vast plateau with thin air. Green grass stretched into the skies, and countless white yurts dotted the landscape. These were the herdsmen of the plateau, herding herds of cattle and sheep as they migrated along with the water and grass. This was the Western Tomb, the world's greatest religion. It ruled over an endless territory, and all living beings within the Western Tomb believed in the transcendent Tao monarch. They regarded him as the final resting place of their souls after death. In the center of this vast plateau, there was a group of towering divine palaces. Even from high in the heavens, one could clearly see them. The divine palaces were mainly colored red and white. The aura of the divine palaces was majestic and boundless. Endless sunlight gathered in the skies, forming 109 beams of light. Each beam of light corresponded to a main hall of the divine palaces, connecting them together. It was like a miracle. The main hall of the divine palaces was the holy temple that enshrined the Tao monarch statue. It was located in the center of the 108 main halls, and the pillars of light here were the thickest. They nearly covered the entire holy temple. Beneath the bright sunlight, it seemed as if it were burning, releasing endless light and heat that illuminated the world. Outside the divine palaces, countless devout believers knelt on both sides of the divine path. They chanted and prayed, constantly bowing their heads in worship, praying for the Tao monarch's protection. Within the holy temple, beneath the indescribably majestic statue of the Tao monarch, was the seat of the divine church's divine throne. This was a dignified middle-aged man. There were fine wrinkles between his eyebrows, but this didn't affect his temperament at all. Rather, it seemed as if he had experienced the vicissitudes of time. His aura was as unmoving as a mountain, and his momentum was overwhelming. The void in the hall suddenly rippled like water, and a figure bathed in darkness slowly emerged from it. She was tall, much taller than an ordinary man. The darkness around her was thick and viscous, shrouding her entire body. One could only faintly make out her impressive figure. She knelt down on one knee. In the darkness, her voice was hoarse. Greetings, divine throne. On the throne, the current divine throne, Ji Xiangtian, had a faint expression. How is it? The woman said, a moment ago, the transmission gate opened. The people of the Hidden Fog Sect have entered the Helm Mystic Realm. Ji Xiangtian nodded. Very good. I don't want them to come out alive. Yes, divine throne. The woman stood up and took a step back. She submerged into the fluctuating space once more, vanishing from sight. Ji Xiangtian had no expression. His eyes were filled with indifference. Everyone knew that the Western Tomb paid respects to the Tao monarch, But how could they understand the strength they controlled? As long as they obtained a medium, they could send down their Tao arts to kill, erasing everything without anyone knowing or sensing it. Sidhu, as he spoke, killing intent overflowed. This was the greatest secret of the Western tomb. No one was allowed to pry into it. Even if there was only the slightest possibility, it had to be thoroughly erased. Chapter 748. Within the hidden fog sect station, Elder C called for his daughter Sijia. After everyone was dismissed, the father and daughter talked for a long time. It was unknown what they talked about, but Sijia's eyes were red as if she had just cried. I regret it so much. Situ C sighed, his face bitter. Many years ago, before he was married, he had wandered the world in his youth and made several good friends. At that time, because they were involved in an accidental murder, a few high-spirited young people obtained a piece of white phalanx. He inadvertently discovered the secret contained within the phalanx, and thus began a cruel journey of treasure hunting. After this group of youths entered the mystic realm, they made horrifying discoveries as well as harvests that surpassed their imaginations. But as time passed, the youths' minds were gradually corroded. They became violent and bloodthirsty, finally igniting a massacre. Because the white finger bone had been held in Elder C's hand, he was able to survive until the end and become the only person to escape from the mystic realm. From then on, Elder C returned to the hidden fog sect and changed his unwillingness to be bound. This continued until today. Regarding that adventure in the past and all his friends that died, Elder C never told anyone. He buried everything deep in his heart. But this time, the Dark Star-Eye Serpent's safety concerned the interests of the entire Hidden Fog sect. After hesitating again and again, he finally spoke. But the truth was that as soon as he spoke, Elder C regretted it. He couldn't help but blame his father who had passed away many years ago. Why had he instilled in him the belief that the sect was the most important in everything he did? Otherwise, how could he have fallen into such a panic situation, fearing that he would face a great calamity in the next moment? Thus, when he said, "I regret it so much," he regretted that he was too young and didn't know what fear was. He also regretted that he shouldn't have spoken so rashly. But now that things had come to this, regret was useless. He called over his only daughter and seriously told her that if anything happened to him, she was to immediately return to the Hidden Fog sect and not investigate further. Of course, this was only the worst-case scenario. He hoped that things wouldn't develop to that point. Stepping into the portal, an invisible strength wrapped around one's body. It was calm, peaceful, and vast, counteracting the tearing strength of the outside world. The entire process was incomparably smooth, and one couldn't feel any bumps. As Xiao Chun looked around, he could clearly see many colors flashing before him. Some of the dark areas gave off an extremely dangerous feeling. Just his gaze alone made one feel as if their soul was about to be pulled out of their body. If the strength that wrapped around his body were to dissipate at this moment, it would surely be an unpleasant feeling. But Qingyu wasn't worried about this at all. It wasn't that he believed in the credibility of the people of the West Hill Divine Sect, but as a sect that believed in God, the doctrine clearly stipulated that believers should abide by their promises. It was not an exaggeration to say that they must keep their promises. Since the Hidden Fog sect had reached an agreement with the Western Tomb Divine Church, there shouldn't be any problems during the transmission process. Otherwise, how could they face the millions of believers? On the other hand, the mystic realm where the red spider lily grew was definitely not simple, since it was labeled as dangerous by them. After a long time, the strength wrapped around his body began to tremble. Qin Yu's eyes brightened. If there was no accident, then the transmission would end soon. As expected, just as this thought flashed through his mind, the colorful colors in front of him suddenly disappeared. Then, his entire field of vision was filled with scarlet. The air was filled with a terrifyingly high temperature. Countless miserable screams could be heard, causing one's heart to tremble. Qin Yu took a step forward and floated in the air. He looked down, and his pupils shrank. He saw that he was currently in the skies above a great lake of magma. It was incomparably vast, and he couldn't see the end of it. The scarlet color in the sky was reflected by this lake. At this time, countless figures floated up and down in this lake of magma, struggling and howling. They stretched out their hands towards the skies, but were powerless to escape. The flesh and blood on their bodies were burned away by the magma, turning into pieces of rotten flesh that fell off. But in the next moment, they would regrow and repeat the same process. There was no end. They couldn't die. They would live in eternal pain. Soul, refining lake. Hufu's shocked voice echoed in Qin Yu's ears. His eyes widened as he looked at the tumbling magma below, his face filled with disbelief. Qin Yu said, "Sectmaster, are you sure?" He was a grand scholar existence with formidable strength and a mysterious background. He certainly couldn't say anything that didn't match his status. Even if he didn't know anything about this so-called soul-refining lake, he still had to appear as if he knew everything. Hufu hesitated. In the legends, the soul-refining lake exists in the plane of hell. It is a cruel punishment used to torture the soul. As long as one commits a great crime in the world of the living and is entangled by karma, they will be thrown into the soul-refining lake. Depending on how big or small their crimes are, they will be imprisoned for a different period of time. When the soul is placed in the soul-refining lake, it is the same as personally entering the magma. All of the strength one possessed when they were alive will be imprisoned, and they can only experience repeated destruction and rebirth, constantly withstanding heart-wrenching pain. Moreover, as one withstands this pain, their consciousness will become increasingly clear. It is impossible for them to die, even if they want to, but the plane of hell has always existed in legends. No life form has ever entered and truly confirmed its existence. This is a mystic realm of the Western Tomb Divine Church. They believe in the Tao monarch and have always been able to control some strange abilities. Perhaps this is a projection of the soul-refining lake, or perhaps it is an imitation. The legends of hell also existed in the world of divinity and demons. It seemed that all living beings with their own consciousness had similar information. It was impossible for such a situation to occur due to these illusory rumors. Thus, Qin Yu believed that the plane of hell truly existed in this world. As for what Hufu said about no life form ever entering, that shouldn't be true. It was likely that they had already entered, but were never able to come out. At this time, Qin Yu's heart shrank. A great sense of alarm rose in his heart, and the source of this alarm was the soul-refining lake below. "Be careful!" He only had time to shout out loud. The tranquil magma lake suddenly emitted an angry roar. Scarlet magma wildly tumbled about, forming massive waves. They collided with each other, constantly breaking apart and condensing, gradually forming a giant vortex. The tortured souls were sucked in and torn to pieces by the strength of the vortex. But in the next moment, they condensed once more. These souls seemed to realize that the main culprits were the two life forms in the skies who had caused the vortex to appear. The souls reared their heads back and roared. They stretched out bloody arms, or arms that only had white bones left, all of them grasping at the two people from afar. "Die, you all deserve to die. Don't think of leaving here, you can't escape. Come down and join us." Sad and shrill voices carried with them a sharp, penetrating strength. They drilled into Qin Yu and Hu Fu's ears, directly exploding in their souls and reverberating over and over again. At the same time, the magma vortex erupted with a formidable swallowing strength. It didn't target their flesh and blood, but directly affected their souls. "Humph!" Hufu stuffily coughed. His body shivered and his face paled. His forehead was covered with beads of sweat. The strength of this soul-refining lake was truly terrifying. Even with his cultivation, he felt powerless to contend with it. He quickly glanced around. His black robes were tumbling about in the heat, but his aura was calm, as if he hadn't been affected at all. Hufu relaxed and secretly admired Qin Yu. Mr. was indeed Mr. Besides his achievements in the path of beast trainers, His cultivation was also unfathomably deep. "Mister, we must leave here immediately." Qin Yu nodded. "All right." He paused for a moment before speaking, giving off an absent-minded feeling. Hu Fu was sighing with emotion, so he didn't notice. In truth, Qin Yu was indeed absent-minded. This was because his soul space had suddenly become lively. Purple Moon wore a gorgeous purple dress. Her chest was high, and her long legs were faintly discernible. She naturally exuded an alluring aura. In particular, because of her excitement, her breathing deepened and her face flushed red. She became even more irresistible. She looked up at the blue sun hanging high in the sky, eagerness in her eyes. She was waiting for the final confirmation. After several breaths of time, the slim figure in the blue sun said, "That's right." Her tone was still icy cold, but it gave off the feeling of a volcano beneath a glacier that could erupt at any moment. "This is great." Even with Purple Moon's temperament, she couldn't help but be overjoyed. It could be seen how excited she was. Although she didn't believe Mimi's words about humans being food bait, the truth was right in front of her. But after the joy passed, Purple Moon soon revealed a solemn expression. She said, "The previous distribution plan will need to be modified a little." The blue sun was silent for a moment. 40%. This was her bottom line. It couldn't be any less. Purple Moon hesitated. In truth, she was satisfied with this distribution ratio. But as she thought about the hidden dangers here, she couldn't help but feel her heart ache. But she knew that the blue sun wouldn't retreat any further. She took a deep breath and nodded. "All right." Purple Moon turned around, revealing a flower-like smile. "Mimi, you are still young, so you can't eat too much. How about giving the extra 10% to Big Sister? Don't worry, next time there is good food, I can give you half. I won't let you suffer a loss." Mimi shook her head. "Big Sister Purple Moon, I may be small, but I am not stupid. Big Sister Blue Sun will give us 10%, so we will each take half. If you don't agree, then we can discuss our previous agreement again." Purple Moon's smile faded. She looked at Mimi without expression for a long time, and then slowly nodded. "All right, we'll do as you say." The three women, two large and one small, finally finished dividing up the pie. Qin Yu's soul opened his eyes, a look of helplessness on his face. "You three, before you finish dividing up the pie, shouldn't you at least tell me what happened? Moreover, from start to finish, I have been excluded from the distribution of harvests. Isn't this a bit too excessive?" A moment later, a part of Qin Yu's mind returned to the outside world. Beneath his black robes, a sharp light flashed in his eyes. He never imagined that this mystic realm where the resurrection lily grew would actually hide such a great secret. Then, why did the Western Tomb Divine Church agree to the transaction and allow him and Hu Fu to enter? Weren't they afraid that they would discover something? Or it could be said that the Western Tomb Divine Church didn't fear the two of them spreading any news about this place, and the dead were always the best at keeping secrets. Bang! Chapter 749. Qin Yu's heart skipped a beat. When the bone hand broke out of the lake, he confirmed his guess. The Western Tomb Divine Church really did want to kill people. Even though he didn't know the reason for the murder, it was clear that this wasn't the time to be thinking about it. Looking down at the bone hand whistling towards him, Qin Yu could feel the tyrannical aura it exuded. His heart shivered, but he also felt a trace of familiarity, as if he had seen it before. Hu Fu was both shocked and enraged. He roared out, "The Western Tomb harmed me." This bone hand was so terrifying that it made his mind tremble. It was as if he had fallen into the abyss. It was impossible for him to resist it. This was not the so-called dangerous. It was simply a hopeless situation of death. The sinister intentions of the West Hill could be seen clearly. But the Hidden Fog sect and the Western Tomb Divine Church didn't have any old grudges between them. So why would they do this? With a deep breath, Hu Fu stepped forwards and stood in front of Qin Yu. "Mister, please leave. I will block it." Today was the day he sacrificed himself for his sect. Even if the Hidden Fog sect suffered a crushing defeat in Dragon City, he still owed them a life-risking favor. With Mr. Ning Qin looking after them, the hidden fog sect's future situation wouldn't be too difficult. However, his plan to free the sect from its shackles was about to be destroyed. Hu Fu pursed his lips. Pain and unwillingness appeared in the depths of his eyes. But in the next moment, that was replaced by determination and coldness. If things couldn't be done, then he would settle for the next best thing. After all, he had contributed his life to the sect, and he would be able to see the sect's ancestors in the underworld with a clear conscience. Schwa. There was the sound of wind in his ears, and a shadow flashed past. Hu Fu's eyes widened as he looked at Qin Yu, who had taken the initiative to meet the bone hand. After being stunned for a moment, he shouted in panic, "Mister, don't!" He stomped his feet and shot out like an arrow. There was no turning back. Hu Fu had already stepped onto the path of no return. No matter what happened to Dragon City, he would still be able to survive. Since that was the case, he would certainly use his life that was about to fade away to seek a future opportunity for the Hidden Fog sect. But the Bone Hand was extremely fast to begin with, and Qin Yu's speed was equally astonishing. No matter how Hu Fu chased after him with all his strength, he could only watch helplessly as the two of them collided. "No!" Hu Fu roared, his face twisted with pain. But in the next moment, he stood there in a daze, as if he had lost his soul. On the soul-refining lake, Qin Yu lifted his hand and punched out, colliding with the Bone Hand. This scene gave off the feeling of an ant shaking a mountain. But the final result was unexpected. Hu Fu's eyes widened, and a shocking scene was clearly reflected in his eyes. The gigantic Bone Hand that broke through the magma. From the point of collision, countless cracks extended outwards, like a hot knife through butter, without stopping at all, as if the Bone Hand that was emitting a monstrous aura was like a clay jar, trembling and shattering, breaking into countless pieces, quickly falling into the soul-refining lake, directly crushing and dissipating the souls that were howling miserably. And these dissipating souls were never able to condense again. The soul-refining lake that was releasing a powerful devouring power quickly calmed down. Even the howling souls inside the lake widened their eyes in fear. Their mouths were tightly shut as they looked at the black-robed figure in the sky, not daring to make a single sound. "Go!" Qin Yu howled as he flew back. Hu Fu's body shook. It was only then that he regained his composure and hurriedly followed behind. Looking at Qin Yu's back, although he wasn't particularly tall, in Hu Fu's eyes, he was like a divine mountain that towered into the skies, piercing through the clouds and piercing a hole in the heavens. Not only was this Mr. a Grand Master Beast trainer, but his terrifying cultivation absolutely stood at the peak of the world. It was likely he was an existence of the divine Tao. At this moment, Hu Fu's awe and respect toward Qin Yu reached an unprecedented peak. After a long time, they flew out of the range of the soul-refining lake. Qin Yu landed on the ground first. He stood on a slope and looked back. At this time, strong winds howled, causing his black robes to flutter in the wind. His aura was restrained, like a great boulder suppressing a storm in all directions. Of course, this was only Hu Fu's illusion. In truth, underneath the black robes, Qin Yu was feeling a lingering fear and rejoicing. Luckily, he had made the right bet. Otherwise, he feared he would have died in the soul-refining lake. With the aura emitted by that Bone Hand, even if Hu Fu went all out, he would only be able to resist a little. Qin Yu simply wouldn't have had time to escape. Thus, he chose to take action, leading to the scene that occurred just now. Of course, Qin Yu wasn't impulsive. The reason he dared to touch it on his own initiative was because he found out why this Bone Hand felt so familiar. When he first entered Dragon City, his mind had left his body and he had seen an astonishing scene. He had seen the powerful ancient that suppressed the dragon race and built Dragon City, and the feeling this Bone Hand gave off was nearly the same as that ancient's. Even so, this was still a grand gamble. He was gambling with his life. If he failed, he would die on the spot without even a corpse remaining. Within his soul space, the three women that didn't yield a single step to fight over how to divide the spoils fell silent. They clearly didn't expect that this mystic realm would be so dangerous. For instance, They weren't able to help Chinyu with that bone hand just now. This left them feeling a bit embarrassed. They couldn't help but think, was it too excessive to isolate Chinyu when dividing the spoils? Hu Fu bowed. Thank you, mister, for saving my life. Without Chinyu helping, he would have died already. The black-robed figure was silent for a moment. Then, a dignified voice sounded out. Sect Master Hu Fu, this place is far more dangerous than I expected. That bone hand wasn't the greatest danger. If you continue to follow me, I might not be able to guarantee your safety. Hu Fu bitterly smiled. Then Mister's meaning is... He originally thought that after entering the Western Tomb Divine Church's mystic realm, he would ensure Mister's safety at all costs. But he never imagined that he would become a burden instead. Chinyu directly said, my opinion is that you stay here. As for picking the resurrection lily, I will go myself. He lifted a hand, and a stone that emitted a faint blood-red light appeared in his palm. Take this stone and don't casually walk around. It should be able to guarantee your safety. If anything happens, leave through the portal. Hu Fu didn't hesitate. He received the stone with both hands. I will follow Mister's instructions. There isn't much time left. I will leave first. As his words fell, Chinyu stepped forwards and shot into the skies, soon vanishing from sight. Soul Refining Lake, where Chinyu had shattered the bone hand, the silent souls on the surface of the lake suddenly screamed out in unison. Without hesitation, they turned and dove into the magma, ignoring the excruciating pain of being burned alive. In the next moment, strands of darkness appeared. They were like some kind of ink-soaked and rendered silk threads. They intertwined with each other and formed a thick layer of darkness. The tall and proud figure of a woman appeared in this curtain of darkness. Although it was blurry, one could clearly feel the shock in her bright eyes. Looking in the direction that Chinyu and Hu Fu left in, the woman was silent for a long time. Then, she let out a long breath. Impossible! How is this possible? Her voice was low and hoarse, possessing a different kind of charm. Getting rid of Hu Fu was the agreement between Chinyu and the three beauties. Only like this would it be more convenient for them to act without their hands and feet being tied. After flying for some time, Chinyu said, we can begin now. Lead the way for me. After a moment, Purple Moon's voice sounded out. From where you're standing right now, turn 10 degrees to the left. Okay. Chinyu's figure turned, and he howled forwards. At this time, his mind was solemn. He was guessing what he would encounter next, so he didn't notice the unnatural tone in Purple Moon's voice. Stop. Wait a moment. Purple Moon's voice sounded out once more. Beneath them was a mountain range. The mountain rocks were pitch black, giving off an extremely strange feeling. Chinyu was completely focused, his body tensed up, ready to erupt with his full strength at any moment. Luckily, there weren't any dangers in the Black Mountain Range. After Purple Moon and the others finished their assessment, Chinyu rapidly flew away. But what he didn't know was that not long after he left, the entire Black Mountain Range stood up from the ground. A pair of giant eyes looked in the direction that Chinyu left in. With a deep roar, the earth rumbled and the mountains shook as it flew away. But before the Black Mountain Range could go too far, it stopped. It looked up at the ground, at the woman bathed in darkness. I know that you don't like to meddle in matters, so I won't trouble you too much. As long as you tell me what feeling that person gives you, I will let you leave. The woman's hoarse voice echoed between the heavens and earth, as if an invisible bowstring was being plucked in the air. It was clear that this was a choice. If he said he could leave, then he could stay. The Black Mountain Range was silent for a long time. Then it roared out loud, as if it were a bit excited. The Black Mountain rocks that covered its body were pierced through by bone spikes. In the blink of an eye, the seemingly harmless mountain range had become a horrifying sight. The woman bathed in darkness didn't change her tone at all. If you want to fight, I can satisfy your wish. It was clear that she wouldn't take a single step back. The Black Mountain Range that was covered in bone spikes fell silent for a long time. Finally, it chose to compromise. With a deep roar, the woman stepped aside. The bone spikes faded away one by one. The Black Mountain Range rumbled far away. After waiting for countless years, Master's clansmen have finally arrived? The woman whispered in a hoarse voice. There seemed to be a shadow floating between her eyebrows, but it was covered by a curtain of darkness, making it impossible to see it clearly. At this time, she stuffily coughed. Her body that was taller than an ordinary man fell to the ground, curling up into a ball. A speck of light appeared in the void above her head. It illuminated the darkness, as if the frost and snow were placed beneath the blazing sun. Zilala. The sound of corrosion caused one's scalp to tingle. After a long time, the light vanished. The trembling darkness around the woman gradually calmed down. She gasped for breath, struggling to stand up from the ground. Her eyes became indifferent, no longer filled with excitement or joy. Those who trespass into the divine church's divine remains must die. Her voice was cold to the bone. Every syllable was filled with thick, killing intent. Although it wasn't cruel and ruthless, it penetrated deep into the heart. The woman turned and stepped forwards. Her body was like a stone that had fallen into a lake. In the ripples, she vanished from sight. Chapter 750. Although Purple Moon and Blue Sun had confirmed their suspicions, the burial ground was extremely secretive and was covered in layers by the Western Tomb Divine Church. Wanting to determine its exact location was a troublesome matter. But in this world, there was no such thing as reaping without sowing. Chinyu didn't feel annoyed. On the contrary, as time passed, the anticipation in his heart became increasingly heavy. The one who suppressed the dragon race and built Dragon City was an ancient. With the formidable strength he displayed, ruling the world would be easy. But the Western Tomb Divine Church claimed that they had existed since ancient times and had been passed down for hundreds of thousands of years. They were the source of all Tao laws in the world. Then he began to connect the dots. When that powerful ancient suppressed the dragon race and built Dragon City, did the Western Tomb Divine Church already exist? If they did, then with their tyrannical actions of suppressing the entire dragon race, would the ancient allow such a powerful religion to worship other gods in the world they ruled? Even an idiot would know that this was impossible. Since the Western Tomb Divine Church was able to survive until now, it was clear that there was another story behind it. If he continued to think about the relationship between the Western Tomb Divine Church and the ancient, he would reach a horrifying conclusion. Moreover, when he was at the Soul Refining Lake, Chinyu had already felt the aura of that ancient. But what the Western Tomb Divine Church believed was a Tao monarch that transcended the world. Even now, that Tao monarch hadn't perished and was able to help the believers of the Western Tomb control all sorts of inconceivable methods. When Chinyu borrowed the power of divinity to construct the portal, he didn't feel the aura of the ancient from it. This caused his thoughts to fall into a paradox. Chinyu took a deep breath and suppressed his tumbling thoughts. His eyes became tranquil once more. As long as he could find the location of the burial ground, all of his puzzles would be easily solved. Western Tomb Divine Church, Holy Temple. Beneath the indescribably dignified statue of the Tao monarch, the Western Tomb Divine Seat suddenly opened his eyes. His eyebrows furrowed together, and the air suddenly became heavy, as if it were about to condense. An invisible pressure filled the air. The spell within the sinful attendant's body had been activated once more after so many years. Did she recover her memories on her own, or did some other problem occur? And now, those two hidden fog sect cultivators just happened to be in the Helm mystic realm. Ji Xiangtian's eyes flickered. If the problem really lay with these two people, then it was highly possible that the proposal to trade the red spider lilies was a conspiracy. In that case, he had to face this matter squarely and nip all possible hidden dangers in the bud. As the Western Tomb Divine Throne was considering this, a giant bell suddenly rang out from the red and white divine palaces. The sound waves caused the skies to tremble, causing the sunlight that shined down from the heavens to gently ripple like water. Ji Xiangtian suddenly stood up. As he moved, the statue of the Tao, Lord behind him, let out a deep sigh that was filled with endless sorrow. Where the sacred palace was, a monstrous aura soared into the sky. The sunlight that shrouded it actually turned into flames, burning fiercely. Countless believers kneeling on both sides of the divine path were excited and fanatical at the sight before them. They kowtowed repeatedly and chanted loudly. This was a true miracle. In the scriptures of the Western tomb, only the most devout believers had the qualifications to see this. This was the greatest affirmation for them. As the believers worshipped, the burning sunlight outside the holy temple became even hotter. Space began to twist, causing the already solemn and dignified sacred palace to seem even more ethereal, as if it would shatter the void and leave in the next moment. 108 divine officials gathered outside the holy temple. They watched as the two saints, the left and right emissaries of light, and the 6 cardinals stepped into the temple. Their expressions were solemn and respectful, but a trace of envy flashed in their eyes. Although they belonged to the high levels of the divine church, it was unknown how many years it would take for them to truly enter the highest levels of authority within the divine church. Your Excellency, divine throne. With the saints in front, everyone bowed. The warning from the divine palace hadn't appeared for nearly 10,000 years, causing their hearts to shake. Of course, on the surface they remained calm, not revealing the slightest bit of panic. Ji Xiangtian had no expression. There is a change in the sacred ruin. Someone has discovered a secret of the Western tomb. With these simple words, the temple fell deathly silent. As the highest level of the divine church, they shared authority with the divine throne and governed the endless territories together. The 10 people in the temple all had the qualifications to come into contact with the existence of the sacred ruin, so they naturally understood the meaning behind these words. In a more serious manner, this was related to the inheritance of the Western tomb orthodoxy. If it wasn't handled well, there would be irreparable consequences. The white-robed first saint stepped forwards. He bowed and said, "Your Excellency, divine throne, I am willing to descend upon the sacred ruin and purify all the sinners that have blasphemed my divine church's holy land." The divine throne thought for a moment and then slowly nodded. "Very well. I will have to trouble the first saint to make a trip." The first Saint Du Irma had a solemn expression. "I will not disappoint your Excellency divine throne's expectations." In the depths of his heart, a thought that had been hidden for many years began to gently tumble about. Qin Yu gently gasped for breath. His chest burned with a burning pain. There were 2 long wounds on his body, nearly ripping open his intestines. The flesh around the wounds was a grayish-white color. A cold and burning aura made it difficult for the wounds to heal. Not too far away, there was the corpse of a humanoid monster that was over 10 feet tall, lying on the ground. It had 3 heads, the largest one similar to a human. On the left was the head of a vicious dog, and on the right was the head of a black snake. The humanoid head had been pierced through between its eyebrows by an invisible strength, and a red and white substance flowed out. The head of the vicious dog on the left was mostly broken and hung limply to the side. This monster was already dead, but the snake head that remained was still stubbornly staring at Qin Yu. The cold hatred in its eyes was enough to make one's scalp tingle. Qin Yu gasped for breath. After he completely absorbed all the poison energy circulating in his body, he walked in front of the monster's corpse and cut down with his fingers like a sword. Puff! The snake head tumbled about. It spat out a mouthful of poison that fell to the ground. In the next moment, it shattered into countless pieces in midair. As they approached the boneyard, Qin Yu began to encounter troubles. There were some things that Purple Moon and the other 2 could deal with. For instance, that powerful, vengeful spirit from before. But there were some things that he had to face alone. Dangers existed. This was because the blood vitality of the ancients had no effect on the monsters here. Rather, it would cause them to fall into a berserk state. This was why Qin Yu's chest wound was injured. "I found it." Within his soul space, Purple Moon's tired and excited voice echoed out. Qin Yu relaxed a little. He was worried that if things continued like this, he wouldn't be able to last until the end and would die here. Who? Chinyu let out a deep breath. He asked, "Where is it?" Purple Moon hesitated for a moment. "Perhaps you should rest first." Chinyu shook his head. "There's no time." With how important this mystic realm was, it was impossible for the Western Tomb Divine Church to not have made any arrangements and allow him to smoothly uncover their greatest secret. Without any surprise, his actions should have been discovered long ago. It was just that he didn't know why, but no one had come. Chinyu naturally couldn't place his hopes on the Western Tomb Divine Church's slow response. The sooner he found the boneyard, the more advantageous it would be for him. Purple Moon clearly understood his meaning. She said, "Follow the directions. No matter what you see or feel, do not look back or be distracted." As her words fell, faint rays of light gathered in front of Chinyu, condensing into a crescent purple moon and a faint blue sun. The sun and moon were like twin fish, attracting each other. They constantly spun around, seemingly slowly, but actually rapidly drifting into the distance. This was clearly the guidance that Purple Moon spoke of. Chinyu stepped forwards. His figure shot forwards, closely following behind the twin sun and moon shadows. Less than 100 miles away from where Chinyu had killed the three-headed monster, a figure floated in the air. He seemed to be condensed from countless rays of pure light, as dazzling as a great sun. At this time, he lifted a hand and pointed a finger. Rays of light shot out from his fingertip, weaving together into a net that covered a black shadow. Faintly, one could see an extremely tall figure in the darkness. She crazily rushed forwards, but couldn't escape. The figure's hoarse voice twisted with anger. "Your Excellency, Saint, do you know what you're doing? Once the divine throne learns of this, he will never forgive you." The figure formed from light emitted a light chuckle. One could even see the corners of his lips curling up. "You lucky survivor, yet you still dare to threaten me? After today, I will have you kneel in front of me and let me do as I please." Looking up, the saint's eyes fell in the direction where the twin sun and moon shadows had gone. There was a trace of satisfaction in his eyes. It seemed that he had found the true crux of the saint relic. It wasn't in vain that he had helped suppress the sinful attendant here. "Go, open up a path for me that can reach the saint body. When the time comes, I will fuse into it and resurrect within the saint body." Then, what about the G family that had ruled the Western Tomb for hundreds of thousands of years? They would still have to prostrate themselves in front of him and hand over all their authority. For this goal, Duerma had prepared for tens of thousands of years. All of his waiting, all of his patience, all of it would bear fruit today. At some unknown time, the skies above his head had turned dark. This was a pitch black that was pure to the extreme, without the least bit of impurity. It was like the great maw of a monster, ready to swallow all. Chinyu could clearly feel that in the pitch-black skies above his head, there was an extremely terrifying danger hidden within. A cold and damp aura lingered in his ears. It was like a pair of cold and callous eyes were floating near his face. If he turned his head, he could see them. But at this time, Chinyu only silently walked forwards, as if he didn't sense any of this. He kept Purple Moon's warning in mind and hurried forwards, not turning his head or being distracted. The sky was getting darker and darker, like an overturned ink jar, gradually soaking the entire world. As a result, one could not even see their own fingers in front of them, and everything was pitch black. In this endless darkness, there were whispers, as if they were discussing something. You could even feel something cold like a tongue sweeping over his hand and face. His back sank, as if someone was riding on it. Then, he heard a child's laughter. "Hee, big brother, stay and play with me?" Not getting a response, she was obviously angry. "Brother, why aren't you saying anything? Answer me, quickly answer me." The sharp howls were like rusty iron nails that pierced into the brain. It was so painful that one's nerves were twitching. Chinyu's complexion was pale, but he didn't stop moving. Although he couldn't see the twin shadows of the sun and moon, he could still feel their existence. The little girl's shrill voice echoed in his ears for a long time. She seemed to discover that there was no way she could keep Chinyu here. With a muffled bang, Qin Yu felt his body lighten. Then, he heard her resentful voice. "We will meet again." With these words, all sorts of whispers in the darkness, as well as those horrifying sensations, vanished like a tide. Then, the darkness gradually thinned and dissipated. Faint traces of light shined in, as if the sky was about to brighten. After an unknown period of time, the rapidly moving Qin Yu felt as if he had passed through an invisible membrane. Then, everything in front of him brightened, and all sorts of noises entered his ears. Chapter 751. Shadow Clan Station. Jian looked at the expressionless Zhou Li, who exuded a cold aura. He sighed inwardly. If he really didn't care, why would he be like this? The colder he appeared, the more it showed how much he cared. He suddenly discovered that he had underestimated the mark that Qin Yu had left in Zhou Li's heart. If he continued to appear in Zhou Li's life, things might not turn out as he imagined. Luckily, after today, he would never be able to return. He would be buried in the Hell mystic realm. Although the Western Tomb's response was vague, with Ji Yun's understanding of his father, he could naturally sense the meaning behind it. But this matter wasn't targeted at Qin Yu to begin with. He was the one who had forced his way in. Even if he died, that was his own choice. He had a clear conscience. Ji Yun sucked in a deep breath, calming his slightly restless heart. As he looked at Zhou Li's profile, his eyes revealed a gentle warmth. He truly liked this proud and arrogant woman. Radiance Temple. A crowd of different beauties gathered together once more. Compared to before, today's atmosphere was much more relaxed and joyful. The hidden fog sect's dark star-eye serpent had been severely wounded. According to the news they obtained, it was in a dying state. This was truly a pleasant surprise. The witchcraft sect had unexpectedly remained silent towards the hidden fog sect, causing them to feel anxious. Who would have thought that the Blue Origin sect would suddenly launch an attack? Although they couldn't figure out the reason, this wasn't important. What was important was that in the arena finals 3 days from now, no one would be able to resist Radiance Temple. Temple Master, the hidden fog sect has tightly sealed off information. We have only obtained vague information, but it seems that they haven't given up on treating the dark star-eye serpent. An elder slowly said. Her long black hair fell to her hips, and her face was incomparably beautiful. Another elder sneered. In a mere 3 days, do you think it can be cured? Everyone in the hidden fog sect is just daydreaming. With such serious injuries, it is already a miracle that the dark star-eye serpent didn't die, but they still want to continue participating in the arena finals. How laughable! The Radiance Temple Master's eyes flashed. She suddenly said, "There's a place in Dragon City that is incomparably marvelous. It can slow down the flow of time." The surroundings suddenly fell silent. The faces of the upper echelons were filled with a sudden realization, before they were filled with admiration. As expected of the hall leader, his thoughts were more thorough than theirs. The black-haired elder stood up and said, "Hall Master, my sect's spirit beasts need to rest before the finals begin. I'll go to the reserved place immediately so that my sect's Feng Wan can have the most adequate rest." Radiance Temple Master smiled and nodded. Good. Anything could happen in this world. Who dared to say that everything was under control? All she could do was be as cautious as possible and destroy the hidden fog sect's last chance. The city shrouded in light seemed to have paused because of the sudden intruder. All kinds of noises in the air faded away like the tide. There was a farmer carrying a pole on his shoulder and 2 bamboo baskets. Inside the baskets were neatly arranged green leaves with sparkling morning dew. Not far away, a chubby middle-aged man dressed in a rich family's official's attire was covering his nose with a white handkerchief. His eyes were filled with disgust. Slightly closer, there was a large and exquisitely decorated carriage parked. The driver wore a dark blue robe. As if he were bored from waiting, he stood to the side with the reins in his hands. Through the white gauze hanging from the carriage's windows, one could faintly see that there were 2 women sitting inside, a master and a maid. All sorts of people turned around, their eyes filled with shock as they looked at Qin Yu. It was as if they never imagined that an outsider would come here. An old man wearing a silk scarf and holding a feather fan stepped forwards. He cupped his hands together and said, "May I ask where little friend has come from? And for what matter?" In a short several breaths of time, countless thoughts raced through Qin Yu's mind. He tried to ask, but his soul space was completely silent. It was clear that for some unknown reason, they had been blocked out. Only he could answer this question. Facing the old man's eyes, the black-robed man was silent for a moment. Then he said, "I came from Dragon City to find a burial ground. Whose bones are buried here?" Qin Yu was silent for a moment. "It is the ancient burial land." The old man's feather fan fell to the ground. In the next moment, tears streamed down his face. He looked at Qin Yu, his body shaking with excitement. "How many years has it been? I've finally waited for you. This torment can finally end." Beside the carriage, the seemingly bored driver looked up. His face was old and wizened, as if his bones were covered with a layer of dry skin. Dark tears rolled down his face from his sunken eyes. Miss, did you hear that? We can finally go home." On the carriage, the master and maid behind the white gauze hugged each other and cried. The official with an impatient look suddenly jumped up. He pointed a trembling finger at Qin Yu. They're here. They're here. Ha! They're finally here." The farmer, carrying the bamboo basket, grinned. "I've waited for these 2 baskets of vegetables for hundreds of thousands of years. I can finally sell them." In front of the city, figures drew back, revealing a road that led straight to the city gates. "The people of Dragon City have arrived. Why haven't you opened the gates yet?" The old man wearing a silk scarf roared. After a short period of silence, there was a deep rumbling sound. The giant city gates trembled and slowly opened. Several tall and heavily armored gatekeepers stood behind the city gates. Behind their masks, their eyes were filled with relief and guilt. They fell to one knee. "Everyone, it isn't that we are ruthless and haven't opened the city yet, but the truth is that we have no other choice. Today, the city gates have opened and we brothers have completed our mission. We have no face to face you all, so we will take our leave first." As their words fell, the heavily armored gatekeepers turned into smoke and vanished from sight. The fat official angrily cursed. "You bunch of filthy fools, did you think that with just a few words, everything would be over? You must be dreaming." He strode forwards until he reached the city gates. His figure twisted and, like the gatekeepers, he turned into smoke and vanished. The old man picked up the feather fan that fell to the ground. He laughed. "Everyone, the tribulations we experienced have ended. If we don't leave now, then what are we waiting for?" He turned and walked towards the city gates. Then, figures began to pour into the city. A moment later, there was no one left in front of the giant city. There was only Qin Yu and the empty city gates. After a moment of silence, Qin Yu stepped forwards. As he approached the city gates, his heart began to beat faster and faster. Finally, he stepped into the city gates. A soft sigh echoed in his heart. "How many years has it been? You have finally arrived, my junior's clansmen." Rumble, rumble, the earth shook and the heavens shook. The majestic city in front of him began to disintegrate. Then, the entire world shattered and dissipated. How was this a giant city? It was clearly the summit of a mountain peak. There were traces of destruction everywhere, as if a great calamity had occurred. The entire mountain peak had been smashed apart. An astonishing skull lay at the bottom of the pit. From its 7 orifices, a milky white halo of light was released, filled with dignity and dignity. It was these lights that illuminated the darkness here. They slowly moved in the air, like ripples in water. In the midst of the light figures would appear from time to time. In these light figures, there were farmers who were picking vegetables to sell, smiling and greeting others. There were rich family members who were happily hugging women in a banquet. There were coachmen who were rushing their carriages home. A corner of the white veil was lifted, revealing the pretty faces of young girls. There was an old man with a feather fan and silk scarf, walking slowly in the academy. The young scholars who came and went bowed to greet him. These scenes constantly flashed and faded away. And these people were clearly the same people that Qin you had seen in front of the collapsed city just now. Mind into an illusion, a dream into a world. Purple Moon's deep and low voice echoed out, unable to conceal the shock in her voice. Qin Yu sucked in a breath of cold air. He understood the meaning behind her words. That so-called giant city he had stepped into just now was actually someone else's dreamland. Moreover, based on what he had seen so far, there were many similar dreamlands. And in each dreamland, there were tens of millions of living beings. Perhaps they knew that they were born from a dreamland, or perhaps they didn't know at all and thought that they were just ordinary living beings in this world. If it was the former, then it was fine, but if it was the latter, just thinking about it left Qin Yu's heart cold. Who knew if he was the same as these people, living in the dream of some supreme being? Blue Sun's icy voice echoed out. You and I are not in a dreamland. She didn't explain too much, but her voice didn't contain any emotion at all. This caused Qin Yu's heartstrings to relax, and the indescribable chaos in his heart began to rapidly dissipate. He looked up at the skull that had smashed into the mountain summit. At first glance, he knew that this was the skull of an ancient, and that familiar feeling made him even more certain that this skull was the one he saw with his divine sense, the powerful ancient who had built Dragon City. He had indeed perished. But just what sort of terrifying existence could suppress him, kill him, and dismember his corpse between the heavens and earth? As if sensing Qin Yu's thoughts, that sigh echoed out in his mind once more. The one who killed me is a transcendent Tao monarch. Tao monarch. A Tao monarch worshipped by the Western Tomb Divine Church. Qin Yu's heart shook. His previous guesses seemed to have deviated. He took a deep breath and suppressed his thoughts. He stepped forwards and bowed. Ancient Junior Qin Yu greets the ancestor. Since the ancient that built Dragon City was killed by the Tao monarch worshipped by the Western Tomb, then why would his skull be left in such an important place? Moreover, that milky white light that emitted from the holes in the head was the divine power controlled by the Western Tomb. How could this be explained? There were too many things he didn't understand. Qin Yu felt a trace of dread in his heart. His body tensed up, ready to respond at any moment. I know there are many things you don't understand. Don't worry, I will explain them to you. The voice suddenly stopped. A terrifying aura erupted between the heavens and earth. Beneath the ancient skull, a brilliant halo of light appeared, condensing into its body. Rumble, rumble, the mountain range beneath their feet trembled. The complete skeleton of the ancient stood between the heavens and earth, like a pillar that supported the heavens. It reared its head back and roared. Just what happened? Why is it that of my ancient race bloodline, you are the only one left alive? Every syllable was like a thunderclap, tearing apart the darkness above his head and widening his field of vision. Qin Yu's head was shaken until he was dizzy. Then, he could clearly see the path he had come from. It was a flight of stone steps, so long that he couldn't see the end. On both sides of the stone steps, there were sharp wooden stakes inserted into the ground. On each stake was a corpse that had been pierced through. Their blood had already flowed out, sinking into the earth along the wooden stakes. The stakes were dyed pitch black and cracked due to the wind. Among them, there was a small body that looked to be around 7 or 8 years old. Although he was far away, for some unknown reason, Qin Yu could clearly see it. It was unknown how many years had passed, and the little girl's corpse had long since withered. But there was a strange smile hanging on the corners of her lips. When combined with her empty eye sockets, a cold chill rose up from the depths of his heart, piercing straight into his head. Without waiting for Qin Yu to give an answer, the ancient race skeleton standing atop the mountain peak grasped towards the heavens. In an instant, 3,000 vortexes appeared. Within each vortex, trillions of streams of light appeared, flowing through them. They were far too fast, tens of thousands of times faster than lightning. With Qin Yu's current cultivation, he actually couldn't see the true appearance of these streams of light. Suddenly, the ancient race skeleton stuffily coughed. On its skull that shined with light, there was a light cracking sound as a crack appeared. Below, the ancient race skeleton's body suddenly turned illusory. The 3,000 vortexes in the skies shattered and dissipated. After a long period of silence, the ancient race skeleton's skull slowly fell to the ground. As I thought, the prophecy of the ancient path's great calamity in the past has come true. Its voice was filled with exhaustion and weakness. Its empty eye sockets swept over Chinyu, giving off an intense feeling. But luckily, when the world was destroyed, the ancient path left behind a glimmer of life. In the moment that all of eternity perished, you became the new ancient. As long as you live, there will be a day when the ancient race will flourish. The ancient race that dissipated into the heavens and myriad worlds will eventually return. Qin Yu's thoughts raced. He said in a low voice, "Ancestor, is there something I don't understand?" He had to determine whether or not the consciousness of this ancient race skeleton could be trusted. This was the prerequisite for everything. Of course, I will tell you everything and give you my final bit of strength. The ancient race skeleton's voice was calm. But right now, I need to deal with some other matters. You do not need to interfere, just watch from the sidelines. As its voice fell, faint traces of ash-gray light appeared. Starting from beneath Qin Yu's feet, it rapidly spread upwards. In the blink of an eye, it covered his entire body. His entire body was ash-gray, and he looked like a stone statue. After his initial shock and anger, Qin Yu soon discovered that this ash-gray light didn't harm him at all. In fact, as long as he willed it, he could directly break through it. His eyes flashed. He chose to remain silent for the time being. He wanted to see what this ancient who had died for countless years and whose consciousness still hadn't faded would do next. Whoosh! The sound of breaking air howled out. A figure formed from pure light followed the long stone steps and landed on the shattered mountain summit. Duerma swept his eyes over Qin Yu's body that had turned into a stone statue. He chuckled, "So you're dead. At least I've saved myself some trouble." Chapter 752. Duerma took a step forwards. But this time, he frowned and quickly drew back his foot. In the next moment, a pitch-black crack appeared where his foot had landed. Space trembled, collapsing and collapsing. The saint's frown deepened. He flicked his sleeves and flew backwards. A cold and harsh aura appeared in his calm eyes. The sinful attendant, bathed in darkness, walked out from the collapsed space. Her tall figure was straight, but her breathing was rapid. She had already paid a tremendous price to break free from Duerma's imprisonment and forcefully tear open a mystic realm space to arrive here. "Saint, this is the Saint Remains Forbidden Land. It is not a place you can approach. Leave immediately." A hoarse voice sounded out, cold and indifferent, filled with determination and determination. Duerma slowly said, "Sinful attendant, do you not feel anything when you see the skull of your old master?" Shrouded in darkness, the sinful attendant shivered. A bit of pain appeared in her frozen eyes. Bang! Without warning, Duerma attacked. He lifted a hand and pressed forwards. A dazzling light descended like a great sun, covering the sinful attendant within. The darkness that wrapped around her was like frost on a window under the blazing sun, rapidly fading away at a speed visible to the naked eye. "Sinful attendant, you want to delay for time so that the divine throne can descend here. But since I've already arrived, I've naturally made preparations. The divine throne won't be able to arrive for some time." The first saint smiled. He stepped forwards. "After today, I will fuse with the strength left behind by the saint monarch and become his representative in the world. With the help of my old master's skull, I will be reborn and become the ruler of this world." Suddenly, Duerma stopped. A rope formed from the strength of darkness wrapped around his feet. Where darkness and light touched, there was a fierce, sizzling sound, like cold water being poured into a pot of boiling oil. "Why bother? If I succeed, it can be considered your old master being reborn in another way." He stepped forwards, and the rope of darkness around his feet began to collapse. The sinful attendant, who was bitterly struggling beneath the bright sun, emitted a pained cry. The saint continued forwards, but after taking a step, he stopped again. Two palms formed from the strength of darkness, drilled out from the ground, and grabbed onto him. Duermont let out a deep breath. The fluctuating emotions in his eyes had completely vanished. He turned and looked at the sinful attendant who was struggling beneath the bright sun. I originally wanted to let you live so that you could be my servant, but since you were so stubborn, I can only send you on your way first. He gently sighed, a bit of regret and helplessness in his voice. But his actions were ruthless, without any hesitation or pity. He lifted a hand, and the light released increased 10 times, 100 times greater than before, like an erupting volcano. The light that was almost tangible pierced through the darkness like a sharp arrow. The sinful attendant fiercely raised its head, screaming in pain. Most of the darkness surrounding her had been dispelled by the light. Her figure became clear, curvaceous, and alluring. However, the coldness in the saint's eyes didn't change at all. He wouldn't show any mercy. The sinful attendant's pained voice weakened. When the darkness was completely dispelled, her life would come to an end. At that time, no one would be able to stop the saint from obtaining the power that the Tao Lord had left in the human world, hidden in the skull of the deceased master. At this time, another bright sun appeared. This one was several times smaller, and its light wasn't as dazzling as the Saint Mo's attack. But the moment it appeared, the saint's complexion changed. He looked up and said, "Your Excellency, divine seat." At the same time, the bright sun he controlled erupted with an even more intense light. But the second great sun that appeared seemed to have a strange absorption attribute. Most of the light was sucked in, and the sinful attendant didn't suffer any serious injuries. A face appeared within the second bright sun. Its eyes slowly opened. This was the Western Tomb, divine seat, Ji Xiangtian. Saint, I am very disappointed. Duermont had no expression and his eyes were calm. Since he had acted today, he had already expected this situation. The Ji family has ruled the Western Tomb for hundreds of thousands of years, and their fortune is unparalleled in the world. They should abide by the rules of the River of Time and be gradually eliminated and faded away. Ji Xiangtian lightly said, "The Ji family was chosen by the Tao monarch to represent the Western Tomb. Your actions today have violated the Tao monarch's will. Aren't you afraid of a backlash and being burned to ashes by the power of Tao arts?" Duermont smiled. "Your Excellency, divine seat, there is no need to lie to me. The Tao monarch hasn't sent down a decree for tens of thousands of years. During this time, there hasn't been a new cardinal bishop or saint. Does your Excellency, divine seat, think that I can't sense any changes?" His tone was rueful, and his expression was one of yearning. It is hard to imagine that an existence as powerful as the Tao monarch would actually perish. You and I have only come into contact with a tiny corner of this world. The reason I acted today was to borrow the strength of the Western Tomb to open up a path to a higher level for me. Ji Xiangtian was silent, as if tacitly agreeing with his guess. But at this time, within the second great sun, his face twisted and a pained expression appeared. "Ha ha ha!" Duermont laughed, his heart carefree. "Your Excellency, divine seat, do you think I don't know that you are attempting to descend into the hell mystic realm? The reason I deliberately gave you time was to wait for you to fall into the trap I left behind. How about it? The taste of withered souls isn't very good, right? This is something I spent 10,000 years to prepare. Now, Your Excellency, divine seat, it is impossible for you to descend again. And once you force out the withered souls, everything will be over. I, the Western Tomb's first Saint Duermont, will fuse with the Tao monarch's strength and revive in the body of my deceased master. I will become his incarnation in this world and sprinkle the light of the Western Tomb over the entire world." Ji Xiangtian was silent. After a long time, he gently sighed. He was a bit helpless, but even more calm. "Saint, you are thinking too much." As soon as he finished speaking, there was a light kacha sound that came from the second great sun. Then, the dense cracks exploded and spread. Duerma's eyes widened in shock and anger. Ji Xiangtian. Bang! The sun image collapsed. The temperature between the heavens and earth crazily fell. A layer of white frost appeared on the shattered mountain peak, spreading outwards at an astonishing speed. Beneath the dazzling light, the darkness that had been suppressed to the point of being powerless to resist began to violently tumble about, instantly becoming rich and profound. It was like a great slumbering beast had finally awakened at this moment. Duerma's complexion darkened. His descending body lifted his hands, and a solemn and pious voice came from his mouth. You are eternal. You are nirvanic. You contain all things. You are summed up as one. The dark skies were torn apart by the milky white light. A massive phantom appeared from within. He wore a blue Taoist robe, and behind him, a sun, moon, and stars revolved. His face was blurry, and his indifferent eyes seemed to reflect the flow of the entire world. Beneath the gray stone statue, Qin Yu's pupil shrank. He instantly determined that this phantom was the transcendent Tao monarch that the Western tomb believed in. But according to the conversation between the Western tomb's divine seat, Ji Xiangtian, and Saint Du Erma, this giant that existed in some unknown world should have perished long ago. How could he still be summoned by divine arts? The Tao monarch phantom lifted a hand and pointed towards the shattered mountain peak. No aura descended, but Qin Yu's mind instinctively screamed out, and his soul shivered. At this moment, he could feel the thick shadow of death looming over him. It was like the heavens had turned pitch black, leaving the entire world without light. There's no need to panic. Just wait here and watch. A calm voice echoed out in his mind, revealing a hint of ridicule, as if the scene in front of him was nothing more than a farce. Qin Yu's thoughts raced. He decided to believe in the voice's words and bitterly smiled inwardly. In truth, facing the strength of the Tao monarch phantom's finger, he simply had no way to escape. This feeling of having no choice but to believe in the voice filled him with helplessness. With a loud scream, the darkness that was suppressed by light suddenly erupted and gushed outwards. The great sun of light was instantly corroded by the darkness and swallowed up. Bathed in the darkness, the sinful attendant's body rapidly expanded. In a single breath of time, she was thousands of feet tall. The power of darkness condensed into a suit of armor. She was majestic and awe-inspiring, like a war goddess of the dark world. This was the first time Qin Yu clearly saw the sinful attendant's appearance. Even though she was magnified to thousands of feet tall, she still gave off an exquisite and beautiful feeling. Her waist was slender, her breasts were plump, and her buttocks were high. When combined with the icy cold expression on her face and the armor she wore, it was a soul-stirring sight. At this time, the sinful attendant lifted a hand. The power of darkness surged outwards, condensing into a pitch-black sword in her hand. She slashed upwards. In the next moment, the black sword collided with the Tao monarch phantom's finger. The world fell into a deathly silence. Time and space came to a standstill. It seemed like only a moment had passed, but it also seemed like hundreds of years had passed. With the point of contact as the center, everything shattered and was annihilated. An impact visible to the naked eye swept out. Wherever it passed, everything was destroyed, broken into endless powder that vanished forever. The entire process lasted for less than a breath of time. But the entire shattered mountain summit had been flattened. Several thousand layers of stone steps had disappeared, turning into a massive platform that was as smooth as a mirror. Only the ancient skull and Qin Yu hidden within the statue were preserved. The Tao monarch phantom in the skies vanished from sight. Duerma's body of light that had descended also dimmed. Across from him, the sinful attendant's body had shrunk back to its normal size. The sword of darkness in her hand had vanished. She knelt on the ground, blood leaking out from her nose and mouth. As it fell to the ground, it shattered. Duerma lifted his hand. Light gathered once more, turning into a 10-foot-long spear. The point was incomparably sharp, and it shined with a dazzling light. Just looking at it made one feel as if their soul would be torn apart. Locking onto the sinful attendant, he said in a soft voice, "Let's end this." The sinful attendant looked up, a cold sneer on her face. The blood that dripped to the ground began to wriggle on its own, drawing out a rune. It was incomparably complex and scarlet. Traitors who die in sin, this is your final chance. With your body of hatred and resentment after death, you can fight for my master once more. Death is freedom. Chapter 753. The withered and shriveled corpses had died for countless years, but they unexpectedly hadn't decayed. When they broke free of the wooden stakes and fell to the ground, they were like fierce tigers that had been released from their cages. With deep roars, they rushed forwards at an astonishing speed. In the blink of an eye, they rushed up the stone steps and hurtled towards the spear-wielding Duermaw. A look of disgust appeared on the saint's tired face. He took a step back and fell to his knees. The spear in his hand, condensed from light, ruthlessly pierced into the smooth mountain stone. Bang! The entire mountain was trembling. Then it began to shake violently. In the next moment, the mirror-like mountain rocks were torn to pieces by the terrifying power. Spear phantoms carried with them a sharp aura that could pierce through all things. They tore through the ground and shot into the skies, piercing through the corpses that rushed towards them. A burning hot aura erupted from the wounds, causing these corpses that hadn't decayed to begin to burn like withered wood. In the blink of an eye, they were turned to ashes. Even so, Duermaw's crazy slaughter didn't scare away the corpses that rushed at him. On the contrary, they became even crazier. To die was to be freed. Because of their betrayal in the past, they had been imprisoned here after they died. Their souls couldn't find peace, and they had to suffer heart-wrenching pain every day. This sort of torture had continued for hundreds of thousands of years. To them, being able to fade away forever was already the best possible outcome. Qin Yu coldly watched from the sidelines. Withered and hideous corpses crazily rushed towards the western tomb saint, where they were burned to ashes in the light. Although he didn't understand everything, he could at least see some clues from what was happening. For instance, the first Saint Duermaw who had come to the Yellow Springs mystic realm to seize control of the western tomb, as well as the western tomb divine throne who had unlocked the sin attendant and had her stall for time for Duermaw. It was clear that today wasn't his stage alone. Moreover, the consciousness within the ancient skull seemed to have expected this. Whether it was Duermaw or the western tomb divine throne, they should all be part of his plans. But even at this moment, Qin Yu couldn't be sure whether or not he would be the one who had the last laugh today. In the midst of his thoughts, he suddenly caught a glimpse of a small figure. This was the corpse of a 7- or 8-year-old girl. After drying up, she was even smaller and thinner. She mixed in with the other corpses and rushed towards the saint. Unsurprisingly, she would end up like the corpses in front of her, pierced by the phantom spear and then burned to ashes in the holy light. But just as Qin Yu saw her, the small corpse suddenly turned her head. Their gazes met in midair, and the strange smile on her face widened. In the next moment, the little girl's corpse leapt up and landed atop the stone statue of Qin Yu. Her bell-like and childish laughter echoed out. "Big brother, I said that we would meet again." A familiar voice sounded in his ears, followed by a series of bang, bang, bang. The little girl angrily screamed and sneered. "Do you think you can stop me just because you're wearing a stone armor? Big brother, you're looking down on me too much." Qin, you seem to hear the sound of liquid slowly flowing. Then a bone-chilling aura slowly seeped in. "Hee, stay and play with me. I really like Big Brother. When I grow up, I'll marry you and be your bride, okay?" Qin Yu's complexion was ugly. He never thought that by watching from the sidelines, he would be dragged into this. Why was this little girl's corpse different from the others? Why wasn't it summoned by the blood of the sinners? If someone were standing outside at this moment, they would discover that the little girl was lying on Qin Yu's back, her hands wrapped around his neck. Her withered corpse was rapidly rotting away, turning into a thick black liquid that flowed along the gray stone that covered Chinyu, constantly seeping into him. Her empty eye sockets looked at the back of Chinyu's head, as if she were considering the sweet and juicy taste of biting into him. However, why did she think that this big brother's flesh and blood could help her resurrect? Moreover, how did she think of all these things? It was as if these thoughts had suddenly appeared in her mind. It was very strange. The little girl's simple thoughts made it so that she couldn't figure out too many complex things. But none of this was important. What was important was that she had to keep this big brother here and have him stay with her forever. If two people fused into one, they could be together forever and never be separated again, right? That must be it. The little girl closed her eyes and let out a comfortable breath. She allowed herself to rot into a black liquid that drilled into the stone layer. A surprised voice sounded out in Chinyu's mind. In all these years, I never realized that there was such an interesting little thing hidden within the corpse of sin. This can be considered a lucky chance. Since she has delivered herself to my door, I will help you receive her. In the future, she might be of some use to you. The little girl screamed out in panic. She seemed to have encountered something extremely horrifying, and yet she was powerless to resist. The pitch-black liquid that fused into the gray stone layer was forced together by a formidable strength, finally turning into a ball the size of a knuckle. His palm was cool, as if he had caught a drop of rain. Then it fused into his flesh and blood. Within Chinyu's soul space, the chain of stars sprinkled down light, and a knuckle-sized black bead appeared. Inside, there was a 7 or 8-year-old girl lying on her back. She had a serene expression, and a sweet smile hung on her lips, as if she could open her eyes at any moment. The ancient's consciousness was silent for a moment. Then, it praised once more. I never thought that you would have such a good fortune. I am even more certain that you will be able to lead the ancient race back one day in the future. Soon, I will give you another good fortune. I will help you complete your great Tao Foundation establishment so that you will have the most solid foundation for growth. It was clear that the ancient's consciousness had already sensed the existence of the purple moon, blue sun, and cosmic sea crossbell within Chinyu's body. But this heartfelt praise and emotion didn't cause Chinyu to feel any joy. Instead, he felt a sense of dread, as if he no longer had any secrets. No one wished to be completely seen through by others. To maintain a certain amount of privacy was the basic desire of any intelligent being. But at this time, Chinyu didn't say anything. He respectfully said, "Thank you, my lord." The ancient's consciousness lightly said, "You are the only remaining bloodline of my race in this world. I will naturally give you everything I can. But right now, I am still lacking something. Wait a little longer, and it will be ready soon." Just as its voice fell, the kneeling, sinful attendant suddenly lifted her hand and punched into the skies. After restoring herself to her original state, she was only a woman taller than an ordinary man. Her fist was white and delicate, but as her fist fell, there was a heaven-shaking, rumbling sound in the skies above her head. A wild strength swam through the skies like a dragon, tearing apart the skies. Because space was rapidly collapsing, it formed a giant vortex. Duerma's complexion changed. "You're seeking death." He lifted a hand and threw it forwards. A spear of light howled out, bringing with it a terrifying strength and speed as it fell towards the sinful attendant's towering chest. But her expression remained calm, as if she didn't realize that destruction and death was about to arrive. A speck of light suddenly appeared. As the terrifying spear of light stabbed into it, it was like a bubble had been popped. In the next moment, the light vanished and the spear of light also vanished. In the sky, the tall Ji Shangtian, who wore a gorgeous robe, walked out from the vortex formed by the shattered space. His expression was extremely calm, and there was no trace of shock or anger. It was as if everything that happened in the Hell's secret realm was within his expectations. His eyes fell. He didn't look at Duerma, but at the sinful attendant. "Although I took the initiative to retract the imprisonment with your current state, It isn't difficult for me to suppress you. If you voluntarily allow yourself to be sealed away by me, you can continue living as the sinful attendant. Otherwise, while I can save you, I can also leave you beyond redemption. The sinful attendant's eyes were icy cold, filled with an unforgettable hatred. But her choice was to lower her head and give up all resistance. The Western Tomb's G family was chosen by the Tao monarch to be the substitute ruler of the Divine Church's orthodoxy. They naturally grasped some terrifying methods that others didn't know about. The sinful attendant had already experienced this once. She was certain that she couldn't resist, so she continued to live. She believed that one day her master would return. At that time, these despicable traitors would be thrown into the abyss, never to reincarnate. Ji Xiangtian lifted a hand and pointed down. Light gushed out, weaving into runes in the air that instantly sank into the sinful attendant's forehead and fused into her body. The powerful aura around her rapidly faded away like a tide. Her complexion became incomparably pale, and her icy cold and hateful eyes became indifferent once more. She felt her knees. The sinful attendant greets the divine seat. Ji Xiangtian waved his hand. Draw back. Only then did he look up at Du Ermal on the ground. This number one saint of the Divine Church hadn't taken advantage of the opening just now to do anything. Ever since the Western Tomb's divine seat arrived, he had remained silent. At this time, Du Ermal looked up and met the divine seat's gaze. The air between the heavens and earth suddenly thickened, as if it would solidify and freeze over. Saint, if you admit your crimes and are willing to surrender yourself, I can spare your life. Du Ermal chuckled. And then, will you completely extract the divine favor strength in my body and create a new saint? You can use this to warn those who are secretly coveting the Divine Church and prove that the Tao monarch who paid his respects to the Western Tomb is still alive. He shook his head. I won't let you do as you wish. Divine Seat, if you want to punish me, then make your move. In truth, I have wanted to fight you since many years ago, and my long-cherished wish has finally been fulfilled today. Ji Xiangtian shook his head. How stubborn. Since persuasion was useless, he no longer delayed. He lifted a hand and grasped forwards. Rumble, rumble. A trillion rays of light erupted, instantly gathering into a sea that swept out in all directions. Du Ermal flicked his sleeves, and a similar trillion rays of light gathered into a sea. In the next moment, they ruthlessly collided. The two seas of light constantly collapsed and dissipated as they collided. Finally, they canceled each other out. He laughed. You are the divine seat, and I am the Divine Church's number one saint's son. All the divine arts that you can control, I know them all. Divine seat, how can you kill me? Ji Xiangtian lightly said, Is that so? The Western Tomb's Ji family had ruled the Divine Church for hundreds of thousands of years. It was unknown how many storms they had experienced, but there had been even more dangerous situations than today. But even now, they still ruled over the Western Tomb and held supreme authority. There was naturally a reason for this. The Divine Church had numerous divine arts. As long as the disciples were devout enough, they could comprehend them and cultivate them, obtaining an incomparably formidable strength. But there were several exceptions. They were gifts from the Tao monarch, and only the Ji family bloodline that he chose could successfully cultivate them. He lifted a hand and pointed out. Chapter 754. With Ji Xiangtian as the boundary, the skies behind him were filled with light. A meteor suddenly descended, locking onto the saint and crashing down with unstoppable momentum. It released an incomparably powerful aura, as if it had fallen into the sea. Waves spread out, and wherever it passed, space would constantly shatter and be annihilated. In the Western Tomb scriptures, the divine descent art had appeared only a few times. But every time it appeared, it meant that a powerhouse that stood proudly at the peak of the world would perish. Whether it was a hidden danger within the Western Tomb or a powerful enemy from the outside world, There had never been an exception. Duerma's eyes brightened. His originally weak aura began to recover at an astonishing speed, becoming even stronger than when he was at his peak. He lifted a hand and pointed out. As his fingertip fell, his body trembled and the light around him rapidly dimmed. Bang! Half of the sky was engulfed in light, like a volcanic eruption. A meteor that was burning wantonly and releasing endless light and heat appeared from within. It dragged its long tail and drew a mysterious trail as it collided with the meteor that was crashing towards it. Divine Descent art against Divine Descent art. The Western tomb Divine Seat's calm expression shattered after a moment of shock. He clenched his teeth and roared. Impossible! How can you grasp the Divine Descent art? This was a unique divine art that the Tao monarch had bestowed upon the Ji family. It possessed incredible strength and was the key to maintaining their transcendent status. But now someone else had actually grasped the Divine Descent art. This in itself was a massive impact on the Ji family status. The saint smiled. He lightly said, "Are you surprised? Divine Seat, the Tao monarch, is the ruler of the Western tomb, and all devout believers are his people. They all have equal status in front of him. If the Ji family can control the Divine Descent art, then I can naturally cultivate it as well." His tone changed, becoming cold and indifferent. The Ji family borrowed the Tao monarch's command to steal the authority of the Western tomb for hundreds of thousands of years. It is time for them to pay the price for this. A heaven-shaking explosion erupted. The shock waves from the collision of the two Divine Descent arts were like a true star exploding. A terrifying strength swept out. Hum, hum. In the skies, giant chains of light appeared from nothingness. They withstood the shock waves of the two Divine Descent arts, constantly dispersing and disappearing. The Yellow Springs mystic realm was a holy relic of the Western tomb. It hid the greatest secret of the divine church, so it was naturally well hidden and guarded. The chains that appeared at this moment were the grand arrays that the West Hill Divine Sect claimed to be able to seal the heavens. They had the power to trap Ascendant Realm cultivators. Yet now, under the bombardment of two God's Descent arts, it was unable to endure it, and it started to reveal itself while suffering severe damage. But the key was that the formation set up by the West Hill not only had the function of sealing the Yellow Spring secret realm, it also had the ability to suppress and imprison. Now, with the destruction of the Great Formation, some of the hidden, terrifying existences in the Netherworld's secret realm began to awaken. There was no strong will that was willing to live in a cage. The desire for freedom would drive them to revolt. The Black Mountain Range lay on the ground and stretched on endlessly. Ancient trees formed a forest that blocked out the sun and sky. Suddenly, a blinding light appeared in the distance. Two meteors collided in midair. The terrifying ring-shaped shock wave could be clearly seen even from thousands of miles away. Everything within range was directly torn to pieces by this terrifying power, vaporized, and disappeared. The ancient trees that formed a forest on the Black Mountain Range suddenly trembled. Then, cracks began to appear on the rocks that they took root in, spreading out like a spider web. Large chunks of black stone fell down, tumbling to the ground and emitting heaven-shaking rumbling sounds. Dust soared into the skies, gradually obscuring one's line of sight. After an unknown period of time, a pair of gray eyes appeared. As it looked at the place where the two meteors collided, it revealed a bone-chilling hatred. Roar! With a loud roar, a giant shadow shot into the skies, instantly tearing apart the dust. This was an astonishingly large bone dragon. In the sea of purgatory, countless souls were soaked in crimson magma, enduring heart-tearing pain at every moment. Suddenly, the calm surface of the magma lake began to tumble and tumble, mercilessly slamming the screaming souls into the depths of the lake. In the blink of an eye, the entire sea of purgatory fell into chaos. An extremely terrifying aura erupted, as if some extremely terrifying existence was being bred within. Bang! A magma arm drilled out, smashing apart the tumbling surface of the lake. Then, a giant head appeared, as well as a body that supported the heavens. This was a giant condensed from endless magma. What was even more horrifying was that this magma giant's body was wrapped with countless souls. They struggled and howled in pain, providing the giant with a formidable strength. Looking up, the magma giant's eyes locked onto a place where light burned in the skies. Its feet moved, rumbling as it rapidly moved forwards. An endless sea of flowers flooded every corner of one's line of sight. Light blue petals gently swayed in the wind, carrying with them a sad aura. A light gray fog shrouded the skies above the sea of flowers. It seemed isolated from the outside world, making the atmosphere even more tranquil. But occasionally, the wind would blow through the sea of flowers, revealing white bones on the ground. This caused the tranquility of this place to suddenly become a bit more gloomy and cold. It was clear that there was no such thing as true tranquility in the Helm mystic realm. This seemingly weak sea of flowers had its own terrifying aspects. Suddenly, a gale that carried a blazing aura blew over from the distant horizon, directly blowing away the mist that shrouded the sea of flowers, causing it to be exposed to the dazzling light that suddenly erupted like the self-detonation of a star. There was a pain scream, sharp and grating like the cry of a child. Then, the endless sea of flowers vanished at a speed visible to the naked eye until there was only a single flower left. The mist that had been blown away by the scorching wind frantically gathered over, forming a dense, almost black mist that enveloped the pale blue flower. The fog tumbled and a pair of blue eyes appeared. It stared at the source of the hateful light, its eyes filled with fear and also a bit of heat. Hufu obediently stayed where he was. He held onto the blood-red stone that Mister had given him. Several times he felt a dangerous aura approach, but he fled as if he had been electrocuted. This caused Hufu to sigh inwardly. At the same time, his confidence in Qinyu increased. Mister seemed to have some understanding of the Western Tomb mystic realm. If so, then he naturally had a greater chance of obtaining the Resurrection Lily. 12 hours passed, and Mister still hadn't returned. Hufu comforted himself that nothing had happened to Mister. At the 14th hour, he couldn't help but stand up and pace back and forth. At the 16th hour, Hufu's complexion darkened. He stared at the blood-red stone in his hand, his eyes cloudy and uncertain. And at this time, it was the 18th hour. There was less than 6 hours left until the transmission gate closed, but there was still no news of Qinyu. Something must have happened. Something must have happened. Otherwise, with Mister's abilities, how could he have waited until now? Just as Hufu clenched his teeth and decided to search for Qinyu, a feeling of fear rose up in his heart. He looked up and saw that in the distant horizon, billions of beams of light erupted. A meteor appeared, bringing with it a world-destroying aura. Hufu's pupil shrank. Godfall art. Although he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he naturally recognized the rumored most powerful world-destroying divine art of the Western Tomb Divine Church. Just what was happening? Why would the Western Tomb Divine Throne arrive in this mystic realm? Moreover, they had released a terrifying Godfall art that was said to be able to kill divine realm existences. Before Hufu could think of anything else, another terrifying aura arrived. It caused his mind to buzz and all the hairs on his back to stand up. A second meteor appeared, bringing with it a similarly terrifying strength. A second Godfall art. Hufu was stunned like a wooden chicken. Could someone tell him whether or not the world had gone insane? It was common knowledge that only the Western Tomb Divine Throne could cultivate the Godfall art. But now he saw two identical Godfall arts. And what was even stranger was that they were clearly hostile to each other. When Hufu saw the first Godfall art, the thought that the Western Tomb was secretly trying to kill him popped up in his mind. But now, he hesitated once more. There was a higher possibility that some unknown change had occurred within the Western Tomb Divine Church, and he and Mister had simply been unlucky enough to be sucked into it. Bang! A heaven-shaking explosion erupted. Even though they were separated by an endless distance, Hu Fu still stuffily coughed. His chest felt heavy, as if he had been struck by an invisible blow. His heart nearly stopped beating, and his face paled. This was the might of the Godfall art. The Godfall art that could kill divine realm cultivators. Moreover, this was a collision of two Godfall arts. Hu Fu didn't doubt that if he were caught in this collision, he would instantly be vaporized into nothingness. Following that was that terrifying ring-shaped impact. The fluctuations were like a tide, destroying everything in its path. Hu Fu's face paled even further. This was an instinctive fear and awe towards this destructive strength. He could only silently pray that Mr. wouldn't be caught in this collision. Otherwise, if he was sucked in, there would be no chance of him surviving. Before the shockwaves from the collision of the Godfall art dissipated, Hu Fu stiffened. The skies above his head darkened, as if a shadow was cast down from the highest heavens. He raised his head with difficulty. His neck seemed to have rusted. He could even hear the bones of his neck grinding against each other, emitting light, cracking sounds. Finally, Hu Fu clearly saw the figure flying through the skies. It was a half-rotten snake with two giant wings. There was a deep wound on its abdomen that nearly cut it in half. One of its eyeballs had been blown off, and the pieces of flesh and blood were stuck to the outside. At this time, the half-rotten snake lowered its head. Its remaining eye directly met Hu Fu's. At this moment, a bone-chilling chill erupted from the depths of Hu Fu's heart. He felt as if he had entered an ancient cave of ice, and all the blood in his body nearly froze. Endless fear filled his heart. He wanted to immediately run away, but it was like his feet had taken root in the ground, and he couldn't move at all. Hesitation flashed in the half-rotten snake's eyes. If this were normal times, it wouldn't let go of this dessert that was delivered to its mouth. But right now, there was an even more important matter. Chapter 755. When the half-rotten snake vanished from his line of sight, Hu Fu shivered as if he had come back to life. He gasped for breath, his body shivering. Just a little bit more, and he would have died in the snake's belly. Just now, the half-rotten snake's hesitation hadn't escaped his eyes. Luckily, it seemed to have something more urgent to deal with. That damned Western tomb, divine church. Even though they knew such a terrifying existence existed in this mystic realm, they still sent them here to take the resurrection lily. Hu Fu took a deep breath and suppressed his chaotic emotions. He knew he couldn't stay here any longer. First was the collision of the two Godfall arts, and then this half-rotten snake appeared. This was a great monster at the divine Tao level. The mystic realm had become an azure field. If there was even the slightest accident, he would have died on the spot, and his death would have been worthless. Mister, I hope you can be safe. Hu Fu lifted a hand and slapped his forehead. The mark he left in his body was activated. Space fluctuated in front of him, and a transmission gate appeared. But what happened next caused Hu Fu's complexion to change. This was because this transmission gate was blocked, and he couldn't enter. That damned Western tomb, divine church. Hu Fu's prayer was clearly useless. Not only was Qin Yu caught up in the shockwaves of the Godfall arts, but he was also at the center of the shockwaves. His line of sight was distorted by the destructive strength, and he couldn't see what was happening around him. Luckily, the layer of stone that the ancient covered his body with had incredible defensive abilities. Even in the shockwaves of the Godfall arts, it wasn't damaged in the least. This caused Qin Yu to realize that the ancient possessed a strength that far surpassed the Western tomb divine church. But then, a doubt appeared in his heart. If the ancient possessed such strength, why didn't he leave this place? Perhaps he might even attach himself to a new body of flesh and blood to complete his resurrection. Although this was an unthinkable matter, Qin Yu believed that to the ancient, this was a simple matter. Why did he stay in the mystic realm? Or was there some other reason? Or was he waiting for some turning point? Qin Yu couldn't guess the answer, but a cold chill lingered in his heart. The ancient's voice sounded out in his mind. Someone used the strength of a Tao monarch to open the transmission gate. There are some blood vitality fluctuations you left on his body. Qin Yu immediately guessed that the one who opened the transmission gate was Hu Fu. It was clear he felt a threat and had no choice but to leave first. "Sir, he came here with me," the ancient said. "If that's the case, then I will help him and allow him to leave here alive." Dragon City, Shadow Clan's camp. At Zhou Li's side, Ji Yun, who was trying to console her, suddenly changed his expression. He stood up and looked toward the main hall. Opposite him, Zhou Li subconsciously clenched his fists. "What's wrong?" A trace of shock flashed in Ji Yun's eyes, but he soon calmed down. "The portal has opened. It seems that they have returned." Zhou Li's breathing relaxed slightly. Then he snorted coldly. "According to what you said, the red spider lily does not exist in the world of the living, and it will wither upon contact. I want to see exactly what kind of miraculous object it is." Ji Yun bitterly smiled inwardly. He thought that this excuse of yours was a bit too shoddy, but at this time, he wasn't in the mood to dwell on it. He nodded and walked out. When he avoided Zhou Li's gaze, he furrowed his brows and his eyes were filled with bewilderment. The portal was actually opened. How is this possible? Soon, he and Zhou Li arrived at the main hall. With a wave of their hands, they opened the array formation and stepped inside. In the spacious hall, the distressed Hu Fu had a pale complexion. As he saw them, he coldly said, "Young Master Ji Yun, regarding the mystic realm, the Western Tomb needs to give me an explanation." Time slowly passed. In the Yellow Springs mystic realm, Hu Fu was standing outside the portal, unable to enter. He was discovered by a blood-eyed spider. It didn't fear the aura of the stone left behind by Blood Qin Yu at all. Instead, after being stimulated, it became even crazier. Just as Hu Fu was about to be torn apart by the blood-eyed spider, the stone in his hand suddenly shattered, and he was sucked into the portal. Ji Yun took a deep breath. He said, "Sect Master Hu Fu, may I ask what happened? I have to know before I can explain it to you." Hu Fu's breath caught in his throat. He wanted to speak of what he saw, but the clash of two godfall arts was something that would shake the entire Western Tomb orthodoxy. If he were to speak of it, there would be endless troubles in the future. Moreover, from how terrifying that half-rotten snake was, there was definitely a great secret hidden within this mystic realm. All of these were the sources of disaster. A character that could become the master of a sect naturally had a good temperament and shrewdness. After a brief, imperceptible pause, Hu Fu coldly snorted. "Not long after I entered, I encountered a blood-eyed spider. Its strength was incomparably terrifying. I summoned a portal to escape, but I had to wait a long time before I could enter. I was nearly buried in the jaws of that blood-eyed spider." His words were a mixture of truth and lies. It wasn't easy to see through them. Ji Yun's eyebrows furrowed even tighter. But before he could speak, Zhou Li's flustered voice sounded out. "Sect Master Hu Fu, where is your companion that entered the mystic realm with you?" Hu Fu had a heavy expression. He said with difficulty, "Not long after I entered the mystic realm, I was separated from Mr. By the time I returned, there was no news of him." Although there was no evidence, the terrifying events that occurred in the mystic realm were likely related to Mr. If this was true, then perhaps Mr. had already. It wasn't that he didn't have confidence in Qin Yu, but that the collision of the godfall arts and the appearance of that half-rotten snake were enough to destroy any confidence. That was a strength that could cause even divine Dao cultivators to perish. Zhou Li's feet softened and her heart twitched in pain. In truth, after her initial anger passed, she already regretted it. She should have tried to persuade Qin Yu again. How could she have allowed him to die like this? But now, from Hu Fu's words, it wasn't hard to judge just how terrifying the Western Tomb mystic realm was. Even the sect master of one of the 7 great sects had to flee in distress. So what could an ordinary person like him do? Perhaps he was already in a perilous situation. No, that wasn't right. Qin Yu still had a slim chance of survival. The one controlling him from behind was Ning Qin. That person's background was mysterious, and his supernatural abilities were vast. He definitely wouldn't send him to his death. Perhaps Ning Qin had a way to preserve Qin Yu's life. For instance, an avatar could descend, or he could possess a body or some other method. But after she asked, Ji Yun's answer shattered the last bit of hope in her heart. I'm sorry, Jolie. I can't lie to you. This mystic realm has an extremely important status to the Western Tomb. Without permission, no one can enter. In other words, Qin Yu was alone and no one could protect him. Jolie's tears fell down. She didn't know why she was crying. Everything was clearly his own choice, and Qin Yu had brought about his own destruction. She had already done everything she could, but her heart was still sour. Emotions flooded her mind like a tide. For the first time, Jolie hated herself for her pride and arrogance. She couldn't forgive herself for watching Qin Yu die with her own eyes. Seeing the woman he liked cry for another man certainly wasn't a good experience. Ji Yun was silent for a moment. Jolie, perhaps he can come back. In fact, although he didn't want to admit it, he really hoped that Qin Yu had died inside. Jolie's complexion was pale. It was clear she hadn't heard his words. Ji Yun was smart enough not to say anything else. At this time, remaining silent was the best choice. He looked at Hu Fu and said, "Before entering the mystic realm, I already warned the sect master that the inside of the mystic realm is extremely dangerous." It was the sect master who took the initiative to go pick the resurrection lily. So, regarding what happened to the sect master, the Western Tomb can only express our apologies, but we cannot give you any more explanations. Screw your mother's balls. Hu Fu cursed inwardly. Even something like the Godfall art had appeared, and yet this fellow was still trying to coax him. If it weren't for the fact that he was worried that this would cause trouble for the Hidden Fog sect, he would have already publicized this matter and made the Western Tomb famous. On the surface, he gloomily nodded. "Young Master Ji Yun, I need to wait here for Mr. to return." Ji Yun nodded. "Of course, before the 24-hour deadline arrives. Sect Master Hu Fu can stay here." Hu Fu didn't say anything more. He glanced at the dazed Zhou Li and sighed inwardly. Before entering the mystic realm, this saintess and Mr. had parted on bad terms. But it was likely that this would be the last time the two of them saw each other. His thoughts raced for a moment before he immediately suppressed them. Right now, Hu Fu wasn't in the mood to pity others. This was because once something happened to Mr., the Hidden Fog sect trip to Dragon City would come to an end. Not only would he die a worthless death, but he would also expose his intentions to resist. It could be foreseen that the Hidden Fog sect would be in turmoil. Ever since he inherited the position of sect master and learned of the sect's secrets, there hadn't been a single day that Hu Fu hadn't been preparing. Just as he was about to achieve his dream, all of his efforts had failed. Could this be fate? The heavens were so unfair to the Hidden Fog sect. The hall fell silent. The portal emitted gentle fluctuations that illuminated every corner. Suddenly, Jolie, who had been crying silently this entire time, rushed forwards. Ji Yun's complexion changed. Jolie stopped, but she was extremely close, and there had been no warning. Just as his voice fell, she had rushed to the portal. "Qin Yu, in the end, I was the one who harmed your life. Today, I will die with you. This could be considered repaying you with a life." Bang! A shaking strength sent Zhou Li flying backwards. Ji Yun's face was filled with fear. He flicked his sleeves and caught her. "Jolie, what are you doing?" Luckily, the portal was still in a sealed state. Otherwise, she would have been sucked in. Just thinking about the consequences left him scared. "Ji Yun, open the portal. I want to go in." "Calm down, I won't allow you to die." Ji Yun roared. He immediately sensed something and hurriedly said, "The mystic realm is too dangerous. With your cultivation, it is impossible for you to come out alive. At that time, even if you die inside, you'll have died in vain. It will be impossible for you to help him. Jolie, you must understand that you are not alone. Your grandfather and grandmother are waiting for you at home, waiting for you to support them in their old age. If something happens to you, what will happen to the two elders? Will they be able to accept this reality?" Jolie pushed him away. She looked at the sealed portal in a daze, tears flowing down her cheeks once more. Chapter 756. The aftermath of the collision of God's arrival gradually dissipated. It was as if an invisible hand had descended and wiped the heaven and earth picture scroll gently, causing it to suddenly lose a piece. The towering mountain range, the stone steps built along the mountain, and the sharp wooden stakes soaked in blood that had stood for who knew how many years. Now all of this had disappeared. What replaced it was a giant pit the size of a bowl. It sunk deep into the earth and covered an astonishing surface area that stretched as far as the eye could see. The inner walls were incomparably smooth and were covered in a layer of melted enamel. One could clearly see the bright skies above. All the darkness and clouds were dispersed by the impact of the collision of the god's descent technique. Perhaps the sky at this moment was the brightest it had been since the birth of the Netherworld's secret realm. Gentle rays of light sprinkled down and landed on the ancient's huge skull. The bones that were as clean as jade reflected a misty brilliance that contrasted with the milky white halo around its mouth and nose. There was an unremarkable crack on the skull, but this wasn't related to the god's descent art. Rather, it was a backlash that the ancient had suffered when he tried to reverse the 3,000 vortexes and find out why the ancient race had been destroyed. In terms of pure power, even 100 god's descent spells would not be able to cause any damage to it. At the same time, the statue that Chinyu had turned into was undamaged. After all, he had died to the power left behind by the Tao monarch. The Western Tomb Divine Throne and the Saint's Son, who were panting slightly, did not suspect anything. Duerma, you have profaned the will that the Tao monarch left behind in the world. As the Western Tomb Divine Throne, I will strip you of your title of Holy Son. Ji Xiangtian slowly spoke. His expression was calm, and his eyes were indifferent. And then, Duerma smiled. Deny my identity, and then suppress and kill me, maintaining the Ji clan's control over the Western Tomb. Ji Xiangtian didn't say anything else. He stood up straight, and the weak aura on his body dissipated quickly, becoming strong and cold. Boundless might was released from his body, and strands of light appeared, turning into a large radiant sword. He raised his hand and slashed forward. Duerma raised his hands, and a dazzling light erupted. His entire person was like a great sun, so dazzling that one couldn't look at it directly. The sword of light slashed down, and the dazzling sun's silhouette instantly caved in. Its surface trembled violently, as if it would collapse at any moment. Puff! Amidst the muffled groan, a patch of scarlet appeared within the radiance of the great sun. Shortly after, it quickly spread outwards, and the great sun turned into a blood-red sun in the blink of an eye. Then, inch by inch, it began to collapse, revealing Duerma's figure. His exposed skin was covered in countless tiny cracks. One could see the dark red flesh within, but not a single drop of blood flowed out. He coughed with difficulty. Drops of blood spurted out and dyed Duerma's pure white, luxurious robes red. Pain and helplessness appeared on his face. Although he could master God's descent and several other divine arts, the price he had to pay was much higher than that of a divine throne. After performing the god's arrival spell and the Sword of Light, Ji Xiangtian's face looked gloomy, as if he had aged dozens of years. However, there were no ripples in his eyes. There was only a boundless coldness and a dense killing intent that hadn't diminished in the slightest. Duerma must die. Let's end this. Ji Xiangtian raised his hand. Ignoring the weakness in his body and the possible backlash, he launched the third divine art, Ruling Spear. Not too long ago, Duerma had used this divine art to resist the resurrected corpse on the wooden stake. But now that it was used by the Western Tomb Divine Throne, it clearly possessed an even greater might. The spear condensed from light was incomparably sharp. It flashed with a light that left one's heart racing, able to pierce through and destroy all. Whoosh! The ruling spear held out, leaving behind a series of afterimages. It pierced through the skies like a beam of light, thrusting straight towards Duerma's chest. The expelled saint had a calm expression. He looked at the falling ruling spear and suddenly said, "Kill the divine throne. I will become the new ruler of the Western Tomb. I vow here that I will grant you your freedom." Ji Xiangtian's pupils shrank. In the next moment, with a loud explosion, the ground covered in enamel shattered. Endless magma erupted like a volcano had suddenly erupted. The ruling spear was submerged in magma. With a heaven-shaking explosion, magma splashed out in all directions. Countless cries of pain filled the air. The splashing magma didn't fall to the ground. Instead, it seemed to be attracted by an invisible strength and rapidly fused together. From the cracks in the ground, magma continued to flow out. A magma giant condensed and appeared. Its body was wrapped with millions of souls, all of them howling in pain as they were burned. Its scarlet eyes fell on Duerma. Its deep and low voice rumbled like thunder. "Remember your promise. Otherwise, I guarantee that your soul will turn to ashes in the magma." Domer nodded. "I will never go back on my word." He looked up at Ji Xiangtian. "The Ji clan of the Western Tomb has imprisoned you here for their own selfish reasons. This is against the teachings of the divine sect. When I ascend to the divine throne, I will expel all the people of the Ji clan from the Western Tomb and let you deal with them as you wish." He naturally understood the principle of cutting weeds and eradicating the roots. Moreover, this was a very heavy weight. Even though the Western Tomb Great Array had been destroyed and couldn't be restored in a short period of time, their strength wasn't suppressed at all. Moreover, the Western Tomb Divine Throne's Godfall Art, Great Sword of Light, and Judgment Spear had all been used. They were no longer in peak condition. Duerma's descending body revealed a smile. His eyes became passionate once more as he looked at the giant skull of his old master. He murmured, "I have come according to your will. I will inherit the power you left behind and become your new spokesperson in the world." The rock demon, bone dragon, and resurrection lily had all attacked. Ji Xiangtian would die without a doubt, and no one could stop him. Duerma stepped towards the giant skull. His expression gradually turned pious. He knelt on the ground and said, "Please bestow your strength upon me." Behind him, the battle between the divine throne and the three sealed ancient wills had already erupted. With the protection of the divine throne's saint robe, even though he was at an absolute disadvantage, he wouldn't be easily killed. Ji Xiangtian lifted a hand and pressed it between his eyebrows. With a loud cracking sound, the white holy light on the surface of his body began to burn like blazing flames. On the surface of the divine throne's saint robe, the star-like motes of light erupted with endless light, as if a great sun had arrived. The light blue halo that lingered around his body was like tumbling fog in the wind, rapidly evaporating and dissipating. Beneath the illumination of this light, the magma rapidly solidified and cracked. Then it broke apart and fell off. The bone dragon roared in pain. Billowing black fog rose up from its body, covering its massive body. As the fog and light came into contact, there was a violent sound of corrosion. In that moment, the three ancient wills were suppressed. The Western Tomb Divine Throne was known as the existence closest to true divinity in the world. They always had cards in their hands that no one could imagine. He fell to one knee and began to chant, "You are eternal. You are nirvanic. You contain all things. You are summed up as one." The heavens shattered and a phantom appeared. This phantom stepped between the heavens and earth. Behind him, the sun, moon, and stars revolved. Its blurry face seemed to contain all the dignity of the world. The Tao Monarch's projection appeared once more. It was even more corporeal than the one summoned by Duerma, and its aura was even more vast, like a boundless sea of stars. He raised his hand and pointed at the silent giant skull on the ground. Roar, a loud roar sounded out. It seemed to cross through endless space and time, coming from the endless distance. It still carried with it a terrifying aura that suppressed all living beings in the heavens. At that instant, the three ancient wills that were sealed up let out a cry and trembled. In particular, the giant bone dragon crashed to the ground. It trembled, and its soul flames danced in its eye sockets. Drops of black tears flowed out. This was because this was the will of its only master, the supreme ruler of the world. The Tao monarch's projection stepped forwards and fused into the skull. Milky white light began to emit from its 7 orifices and immediately began to burn. An indescribably boundless majesty erupted from within. It was like a towering mountain from the highest heavens had arrived, pressing down on everyone's chests. Duerma felt that something was wrong. His eyes widened, and he looked at the giant skull floating in the air. A chill drilled out from the depths of his heart. Space quietly shattered, and a black vortex appeared. The Bone Dragon, Rock Demon, and Resurrection Lily cried out miserably as they were sucked in. Rumble, rumble, the black vortex crazily spun. A powerful swallowing strength covered Duerma. His face paled, and disbelief filled his face. Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. The one you chose was me. So how could this be? No one answered him. A boundless will crash down like a divine pillar that supported the heavens. It smashed into Duerma's mind, tearing his will to pieces and swallowing it up by the black vortex. His body spun along with the vortex and rapidly dissipated into powder, vanishing from sight. After several breaths of time, all that was left over was a mass of dazzling light. Within this mass of light, one could faintly make out Duerma's pained and twisted face. But no matter how he struggled, he couldn't avoid his final fate. Duerma's face shattered, vanishing into the light. The pale and weary Western Tomb divine seat fell to his knees. Your strength stands above the world. You are the ruler of all creation. He looked at the mass of light in the vortex, his eyes excited and filled with desire. Duerma had already died. The strength he left behind would be bestowed upon new saints so that the Tao monarchs could continue to walk the earth. And here, only he met the requirements to fuse with the holy light. If he could obtain this holy light, perhaps his strength would break through the limits and reach a completely new boundary. The black vortex trembled and a mass of light howled out. Under Ji Xiangtian's stunned gaze, it smashed into the stone statue that everyone had overlooked and instantly fused into it. Chapter 757. Cracks began to appear on the surface of the gray statue. Then, large pieces began to fall off, revealing Qin Yu's figure within. Beneath his black robes, he was wrapped in a milky white halo of light. Within his soul space, a blurry phantom appeared. As he arrived, an invisible aura covered the entire area, suppressing all. Then, he took a step forwards and directly fused into Qin Yu's soul. There was no negative feeling at all. Rather, it was like drinking a cup of refreshing cold drink on a hot summer day, refreshing to the heart. Qin Yu could clearly hear the cracks that remained in his soul after he used the dragon soul, the sounds of them closing and closing. Bang! A powerful soul aura erupted. The soul injuries that had troubled Qin Yu for so long were now completely healed. Moreover, the strength of his soul had broken through to a whole new boundary. It was a feeling as if he was one with the world, and with a wave of his hand, he could disturb the stars in the sky. The ancient's voice sounded out. I discovered that you had some injuries on your body, so I took advantage of the situation to help you repair them. Moreover, now that you have the status of a saint's son, it will be much more beneficial to your next actions. Of course, most importantly, you will only have the opportunity to inherit the power that the Tao Lord left behind in this world after becoming the Holy Son. As for breaking through boundaries, he didn't even mention it. Perhaps in the eyes of the ancient, Qin Yu's current level of strength was too low, so he wasn't worthy of his attention. The great divine seat of Western Tomb Ji Xiangtian was stunned for a long time. Finally, he regained his composure and looked at Qin Yu, who was wrapped in the light. Shock, confusion, astonishment, and other emotions flashed in his eyes. Finally, they turned into bitterness, unwillingness, and anger. He never imagined that the good fortune that should have belonged to him would end up in Qin Yu's hands, someone who had nothing to do with the Western tomb and was even a medium that he had wanted to kill not too long ago. How could Ji Xiangtian accept such a result? He took a deep breath and looked at Qin Yu, a cold light in his eyes. In order to inherit the power of holy light and become the new saint's son, one needed to have a pious faith in the transcendent Tao monarch. Only then would there be a chance of fusing with him. Otherwise, this holy light would be a terrifying bomb, enough to blow up the person who had fused with it into nothingness. Was this black-robed man from the hidden fog sect a devout believer of the Tao monarch? What a joke. The great divine seat's expression calmed down. He didn't know why the Tao lords would choose this person, but this must be wrong. Could it be that because the main body had fallen, the summoned projection had also lost its consciousness? Ji Xiangtian took a deep breath and suppressed this blasphemous thought. His heart became devout and resolute once more as he prepared to fuse with Duo Erma's power. After Qin Yu's body exploded, he was the only one left here that met the conditions. No matter what the Tao monarchs will considered, it could only choose him. In the end, what's mine is mine. It's just that it's been delayed a bit. But in truth, Qin Yu didn't feel the least bit of test. As the holy light entered his body, it directly fused with him. Moreover, as time passed, the fusion speed became increasingly fast. After his soul injuries were completely healed, his strength continued to rise. This sort of clear and perceptible increase in strength was astonishing. Although Qin Yu still had some doubts in his heart, he couldn't help but immerse himself in it. He hoped that this process would never end. 3 breaths of time passed. Ji Xiangtian's expression was cold. "Brat, you're going to die." Another 3 breaths passed. Ji Xiangtian's expression remained cold. "Brat, you're going to die." After another 3 breaths, Ji Xiangtian's expression was still cold. "Brat, you're going to die." Suddenly, the holy light that wrapped around Qin Yu began to weaken. In the blink of an eye, it completely shrank back into his body. Before the grim expression on the divine throne's face could fade, he saw Qin Yu appear in front of him after the holy light dissipated. Wait a minute. What was going on? Didn't he say he would explode to death? Fused. He actually fused. This bastard actually fused. Ji Xiangtian felt his chest tighten, and the aura that was suppressing his injuries suddenly scattered. He coughed and spat out a mouthful of blood, his face filled with misery. What was this? An inexplicable person had actually managed to smoothly fuse with the holy light and become the divine church's new saint's son? Thou have grievances? The majestic voice sounded out once more, like a million thunderclaps. Ji Xiangtian quivered. His complexion paled, and his pupils shrank. He suddenly realized something. Whether or not the Tao monarch had perished was only a guess he, Du Ermal, and the others had made. The truth might not be like this. If the transcendent Tao monarch hadn't perished, then what happened now might have been the choice of his will. As the Western tomb divine throne, he was known as the Tao monarch's representative of the world. If he had any grievances against the ruler he believed in, there was no need to mention the consequences. Cold sweat instantly soaked his robes. Ji Xiangtian fell to his knees, his noble head touching the ground. Your will is the highest ruler. Bang! The space behind him suddenly shattered. Ji Xiangtian was sucked in and expelled from the Yellow Springs mystic realm. The Western tomb divine throne was an existence that held the highest authority within the divine church. For him to be expelled from his own sphere of influence, if this matter were to spread out, it was unknown just how many jaws would fall off. The black vortex that crushed Du Ermal rapidly shrank. It submerged into the ancient skull and was submerged in a rich holy light. Then, the fluctuations of his consciousness sounded out. I know you have many questions. I will explain them to you. A mass of holy light flew out, submerging between Qin Yu's eyebrows. His mind was instantly sucked in, and countless images appeared in his mind. In the skies above the towering dragon city, A giant dragon bathed in blood reared back its head and roared. There was a terrifying wound on its massive body, nearly cutting it in half. One could clearly see the broken bones and large amounts of ruptured organs within the dragon's body. The dragon's eyes clearly reflected a battle that was occurring in the clouds. The winds and clouds moved together, and the sky shattered and distorted. One could only see the occasional figure that appeared. One side of the battle was the ancient race that had constructed Dragon City. Across from him was a blue-robed Taoist. Although this Taoist was as small as an ant in front of the ancient race, the aura he erupted with was like a true sun that hung high in the highest heavens. No one dared to underestimate him in the slightest. Even facing the ancient race, this Taoist didn't seem to be at a disadvantage. Every time he raised his hand, beams of light would cut through the skies, bringing with them a heaven-shaking aura. The ancient race didn't have any fancy moves, but every punch and kick contained a boundless strength that could shatter the heavens and crack apart the earth. With the level of strength of both sides, if they fought like this, the shockwaves would be enough to destroy the heavens and extinguish the earth, erasing everything in this world. But in the void, a layer of golden light appeared, completely canceling out and absorbing the shockwaves from both sides. Tao Monarch, you and I are not great enemies, so why are you doing this today? The ancient's deep voice echoed out. The Tao Monarch lightly said, On my road to the great Tao, you are nothing but a stepping stone. What a tyrannical path of a heavenly monarch. Then, let's see whether or not the Tao Monarch has the strength to trample me beneath your feet. The scene changed. On the lofty plateau, there were many divine palaces. On top of the 109 divine palaces, there were blood-colored flames burning. Suddenly, space shattered and the ancient stepped out. He lifted a hand and grasped at the ground. Bang! Flames shot up from the 109 temples, condensing into 109 crimson pillars of fire. Between these pillars of fire, the phantom of a saber appeared. Its entire body was crimson, as if it had drunk the blood of 1,000,000,000,000 lives. Even though it was only a phantom, it caused the heavens to shatter and massive cracks to spread out like an abyss. Outside the divine palaces, trillions of believers were prostrating themselves on the ground. At this time, they raised their hands, fanatical expressions on their faces. Deep within their eyes, flames burned. Their eyes were crimson red. From the shattered space, the Tao Monarch's figure appeared. He looked at the crimson saber phantom and paused for a moment. He lightly said, If you nurture this saber, I might not be your match. Chapter 758. The Tao Monarch lifted a hand and pointed forwards. Bowl-sized golden lotuses appeared. As the lotuses bloomed, countless halos of light were released. The halos of light spread out like a tide, swallowing up the crimson saber phantom. It was like two celestial bodies colliding as a wild strength swept out in all directions. Pa! Pa! Cracks began to appear on the golden lotuses as fine as a spider web. The Tao Monarch frowned for a moment before composing himself. He looked down at the 109 divine palaces that were still burning. The blood saber in the ancient's hand trembled. White runes appeared on it. Their aura was gentle, but they divided and imprisoned it. Outside the 109 divine palaces, a warm white color appeared within the burning blood-red flames. It seemed to melt into water as it rapidly spread outwards. More and more white runes appeared on the blood saber. The ancient roared, You dare to betray me? He lifted a hand and clenched his fist. The 109 divine palaces exploded at the same time, revealing the cultivators wearing divine robes within. Their faces were deathly pale and blood flowed out from their orifices. Their eyes were filled with fear, but their expressions were calm. They prostrated themselves on the ground. You are eternal. You are nirvanic. You contain all things. You are summed up as one. Milky white holy light emitted from their bodies, expelling and burning away the remnant blood energy in their bodies. After a brief period of pain and struggle, their faces became calm and gentle. The fragments of the 109 divine palaces danced in the air. Then, as if they were attracted by an invisible strength, they rapidly flew back and gathered together. In the blink of an eye, they were restored to their original appearance. But now, they were bathed in a soft and warm white holy light. The Tao monarch's voice was calm. "You have lost," the ancient roared. "Despicable." The blood saber in his hand shattered, turning into countless blood-red fragments. "All those who betray me must die." Outside the divine palaces, trillions of believers exploded at the same time. Like firecrackers being lit, everything turned scarlet. Seas of blood, mountains of corpses, and blood energy soared into the heavens. The Tao monarch had an indifferent expression. He flicked his finger and a golden lotus howled out. It opened its mouth and swallowed the ancient. The scene changed again. The Tao monarch held the blood saber in his hand. This was the treasure of the ancient that had been destroyed. His voice was icy cold. "The ancient cultivators have slaughtered trillions of lives and have stained themselves with great karma. Today, I will dismember my body and suppress this world, never to transcend." Shwa, shwa. As the saber light slashed down, the gigantic body of the ancient race being was split into 5. His head flew up into the sky and was swallowed up by the collapsing space. The remaining 4 parts of his body, including his hands and feet, flew out in all directions. Along with a loud rumble, they were suppressed into the ground. The Tao Lord looked down at the crimson saber in his hand, which had absorbed the lifeblood of billions of living beings. Then, he casually tossed it into the air. The existence of the weapon of slaughter was unknown, so it was suppressed together with its damaged body. After millions and millions of years of corrosion, it finally rotted away. The Tao Lord turned around and disappeared with a single step. Yellow Spring, Secret Realm. Rumble. Thunder roared without end. Resplendent lightning interweaved into a net that covered the entire space. Suddenly, the sky shattered, and a large object fell down. The lightning that filled the sky seemed to be attracted by it, and madly gathered over to envelop it. As the lightning wreaked havoc, all the flesh and blood quickly dissipated. With a loud bang, only the white skull fell to the ground. The huge mountain peak instantly shattered and caved in. Large cracks appeared in the lightning. "Tao Lord, you plotted against me. I can't accept this." The illusory figure of the ancient race appeared within the lightning and roared into the sky. Shwa, the Tao Lord's figure appeared. His expression was calm. "I don't need you to accept me." He lifted a hand, and lightning erupted, tearing apart the ancient's figure. A wild strength swept out, causing the mountain peak to become even more disorderly. He turned his hand and placed it between his eyebrows. The Tao Lord pulled out a mass of holy light and thrust it into the ancient's skull. Between the ancient's 7 orifices, massive amounts of holy light began to shine out. The cruel aura rapidly dissipated, becoming calm and dignified. "I hope I won't need to use these arrangements in the future," muttering to himself. The Tao Lord glanced at the ancient skull and then left. Qin Yu's mind trembled. With a bit of dizziness, his vision slowly recovered. "Now, you should understand the general situation. I will explain the specifics later." The ancient's voice was calm. "In the past, although I was defeated and killed in a trap, I cannot help but acknowledge that the Tao Lord was a formidable opponent. If he could succeed in becoming a heavenly lord, he would be able to freely wander through the heavens, shining as brightly as the sun and moon. But there was one point, and that was that he misjudged my strength. He also didn't truly understand why the ancient race was so strong. In the past, when I was dismembered and suppressed, a wisp of my remnant soul was hidden in my soul, avoiding the Tao Lord's divine sense. Thus, I was able to live to this day. Of course, I have already died. The meaning of living is only to maintain a wisp of my divine sense and not scatter, waiting for someone of my race to inherit my strength. Moreover, because of certain reasons, I have to draw support from the Daylord's strength in order to exist for a long time. You can think of this as some sort of fusion. In this fusion state, I cannot take even half a step away from the skull. It is the same as being forever imprisoned here. I have no idea how many years have passed, and I have waited for you. But I never imagined that my ancient bloodline would also arrive together with you. I never imagined that news of my bloodline being destroyed in the endless river of time would also arrive. The ancient fell silent. The air was heavy. Qin Yu was silent. He knew that he didn't need to say anything right now. He only needed to be a good listener. After a moment, the ancient sighed. He continued to say, "Luckily, the heavenly Tao left behind a sliver of hope. Your existence is the hope for the revival of the ancient race. I will do my best to help you inherit my strength and the Tao Lord's strength. Perhaps you might be puzzled as to why the strength of the Tao Lord who killed me would be controlled by me. This is a very complex question, but you only need to remember that the Tao Lord has already perished and the strength he left behind is now ownerless. If you can control it, then you have a chance of becoming a new Tao Lord. You can step onto the road of becoming a heavenly monarch. This is a transcendent great Tao that stands above the highest heavens, one that overlooks all the heavens. Within Qin Yu's body, the holy light that fused with him faintly trembled. Then, a longing feeling surged out from the depths of his heart. Countless incomplete images flashed through his mind. Most of them weren't clear, but there was one that was particularly clear. The phantom of a Tao Lord stood high above the highest heavens. A trillion rays of light emitted from his body, illuminating the world like a great sun. Countless lives prostrated themselves beneath his feet, chanting and worshiping him with pious looks on their faces. This Tao Lord's face was Qin Yu's. At this moment, an omnipotent thought appeared in Qin Yu's mind, as if he were the ruler of the world, able to cause the heavens to collapse and the earth to cave in with a single thought. As far as his eyes could see, everything was his own domain. Even with Qin Yu's formidable mind, he was instantly entranced. An intense intuition swelled up in his mind. If he could inherit the strength of the Tao Lord and step onto the heavenly monarch great Tao, then this would be his future achievements. But at this time, a throbbing feeling spread out from the depths of his soul. It was like a bucket of cold water had been poured over his head, dousing his fervent thoughts. Beneath the black robes, Qin Yu stiffened. A cold sweat gushed out from his forehead, causing his entire body to turn icy cold. In an instant, his mind had fallen into a trance. If it weren't for this sudden throbbing feeling, he feared he would have continued to sink deeper. In fact, he might even be affected and his mind distorted, turning into a puppet that fanatically pursued the heavenly monarch great Tao. At that time, Qin Yu would still be Qin Yu, but he would no longer be him. The ancient sighed in praise. As I thought, I wasn't wrong about you. By relying on your own will, you were able to resist the temptation of the heavenly monarch great Tao. Its tone changed, filled with pride. The heavenly monarch great Tao is indeed a wondrous and transcendent technique that can reach the highest heavens. Once you succeed, you can suppress the heavens. But my ancient bloodline does not need to care about this. As long as we continue to temper our bodies and awaken our bloodline, then by relying on our ancient body, we will be immortal and indestructible, forever suppressing immortals and demons. You are very good. You didn't need me to do anything, and you were able to break free of the temptation on your own initiative. Like this, I can rest assured that you can fuse with the strength of the Tao Lord. The heavenly monarch great Tao will become a supporting strength for your ancient body in the future, helping you step onto the peak. Qin Yu bowed. I will listen to Senior's instructions. His tone revealed a bit of excitement, anticipation, and of course a bit of restlessness and unease. Movie King acting activated. Qin Yu didn't know why. Facing this existence that was also an ancient, He felt restless from start to finish, but he believed in his own intuition. Moreover, that throbbing feeling just now was a warning from the little blue lamp. Even to this day, Chin still didn't know what the little blue lamp was. But compared to the ancient in front of him, he was more willing to believe in the little blue lamp that had gone through life and death with him and had walked step by step to where he was today. The ancient said, "Don't worry, you are the only hope of my race. I will not allow anything to happen to you. The lucky chances sealed away in this world can only be inherited by you. Today, I have used up too much of my strength. Leave first. I will guide you through the holy light within your body. Remember, you are an ancient, the most noble bloodline in the world. There is no need for you to feel fear, and there is no need for you to bow your head to anyone." Space shattered, and Chin was sucked in. The Yellow Springs mystic realm quieted down. The blazing flames on the ancient skull gradually shrank and fell silent. Those empty eye sockets looked at the place where Chin vanished. After a long time, there was a deep sigh. 24 hours passed. The spatial gate closed and dissipated. Hufu closed his eyes in pain, his heart filled with unwillingness. In the end, he had failed, but soon he opened his eyes once more. Now wasn't the time to despair. He had to make arrangements as soon as possible and hope that the hidden fog sect could survive the upcoming turmoil. Hufu took a deep breath and cupped his hands together. "Young Master Jian, I bid my farewells." His voice was hoarse. After speaking, he didn't linger and left. Jian watched him leave. Then, he turned and looked at the dazed Zhou Li, his eyes complex and his heart sour. After a moment of hesitation, he said in a soft voice, "Zhou Li, the dead are gone. Don't be too sad." Zhou Li nodded blankly. Although she had already guessed the result, when it truly appeared in front of her, she still felt as if her heart had been hollowed out. Chin had died. The man who had appeared in her world, the man who had changed her fate, would never return. "Ji-yun, I know that this isn't your fault, but he died in the Western Tomb's mystic realm. I hope that you won't disturb me for the time being." Zhou Li turned and walked away, her long skirt dragging on the ground. She was still beautiful, but she was like a wilted flower that had lost all spirit. "Chin, I will not let you die in vain. Someone will pay the price for this. Please believe me." An hour later, Zhou Li stood in front of the Shadow Clan Patriarch. She said in a soft voice, "Patriarch, I have already considered it. I am willing to enter the Shadow Clan's holy land." The Shadow Clan Patriarch frowned. "Saintess, I have already told you about the dangers of the Holy Land, so I won't say anything more. But you must consider this matter carefully. There is no need to be impatient." Zhou Li said, "I have already decided." She needed formidable strength. The Shadow Clan Patriarch sighed. "All right, I will personally send the Saintess into the Holy Land." You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.